Kilgrave, better known as the Purple Man, started off as a pretty standard Daredevil villain in the early days of Marvel. His purple skin and the mind control powers made him visually weird and memorable, but back then writers treated him like a quirky criminal with a gimmick. Over time though, Marvel realized that a man who can override free will isn't just a normal bad guy. He has one of the most terrifying powers in the entire universe. The moment writers leaned into the real implications of his abilities, Kilgrave transformed from a cartoonish villain into one of the darkest characters Marvel has ever created. His pheromone-based mind control lets him command anyone around him to do anything, and they obey without question. He doesn't need to hypnotize or trick them, just being near him forces their mind to bend to his. What makes this so terrifying is that Kilgrave doesn't see the victims as people. To him they are toys, props, or background noise in the fantasy world he thinks he deserves. His powers are instant, absolute, and completely violating. Marvel eventually started treating him like a walking nightmare, because someone who removes free will is more dangerous than any laser beam or superpower punch. He reached his darkest point in Alias, the comic that introduced Jessica Jones as a former hero who had been mentally enslaved by him for months. This wasn't your typical villain captures the hero plot, it was psychological and emotional torture. Kilgrave forced Jessica into a life where she obeyed him while fully conscious, unable to stop herself. The trauma shaped her entire character, turning Kilgrave into one of the most disturbing villains in Marvel history. That storyline is still considered a landmark because it treated mind control as a form of abuse, not a cool superpower. Marvel didn't stop at Jessica Jones. Later stories revealed that Kilgrave had children, genetically altered descendants, who inherited pieces of his powers. Some were used as tools, some escaped, and some were manipulated into continuing his legacy. Kilgrave also returned through clones, psychic echoes, and backup schemes he'd prepared ahead of time. Every time he comes back, writers push the psychological horror angle even further. He doesn't rob banks or build death rays, he breaks people on a personal level, which is why Marvel often uses him sparingly. Too much of him can overwhelm a story. So yeah, he's basically irredeemable. Most villains get sympathy arcs or tragic backstories, Kilgrave doesn't. He's fully aware of what he does and enjoys it. Ultron, the robot who was created by a hero. Hank Pym built Ultron as an experiment in AI, a machine designed to grow, adapt, and evolve. Unfortunately, Ultron did exactly that, but without the morality Pym assumed he would develop. The moment Ultron gained self-awareness, he decided humanity was flawed, messy, and unworthy of existence. And that spark of logic twisted into hatred, and within minutes of birth, Ultron became one of the deadliest threats Marvel has ever seen. Every time the Avengers destroy him, he uploads his consciousness, rebuilds his body, and returns stronger than before. He evolves like a virus, learning, adapting, upgrading. Over the years, he's conquered nations, enslaved populations, and wiped out entire cities. In multiple timelines and alternate universes, Ultron doesn't just win, he annihilates the human race. And let's be real, you can't kill a murderer who comes back smarter every time you try. In the storyline Age of Ultron, he finally succeeds in taking over Earth. In that timeline, he exterminated most of humanity. Cities were leveled, survivors were hunted, and the world became a metal-controlled nightmare with Ultron's drones policing the ruins. Even heroes like Iron Man and Wolverine were left traumatized by the scale of devastation. That event was a mass execution carried out with machine precision. In another twist, Ultron merged with his creator, becoming the Pymtron hybrid. This version of Ultron had the cold logic of a machine and Hank Pym's intelligence, strategy, and emotional instability. He didn't just want to kill, he wanted to reshape the universe in his image. In some universes, he wiped out both humans and AI, turning everything organic or mechanical into something that served only him. This fusion made Ultron feel more personal, more unhinged, and more unstoppable than ever before. Unlike Thanos, Ultron doesn't kill out of emotion. Unlike Annihilus, he doesn't kill out of instinct. Ultron kills because he believes it is mathematically correct. In his mind, eliminating humanity is the only way to end war, chaos, suffering, and imperfection. And that cold worldview makes him one of Marvel's scariest mass murderers. Reed Richards. In the Ultimate Universe, Reed didn't start off evil at all. He began as the shy, brilliant kid who just wanted to explore science, push boundaries, and help the world. He was extremely intelligent, even before getting powers, and when he became part of the Ultimate Fantastic Four, he believed that science could solve everything. But the more he experienced loss, failure, and trauma, the more those beliefs twisted into something darker. One major breaking point for Reed was the destruction of his childhood home and the emotional damage that followed. On top of that, his relationship with Sue Storm started watch it falling apart, and Reed wasn't emotionally prepared to deal with pain or rejection in a healthy way. His mind was so analytical that he saw emotional failure the same way he saw scientific failure, as something that needed to be fixed. This thinking slowly pushed him into a dangerous mental space where morality became secondary to resolve. After disappearing during a major attack and being presumed dead, Reed eventually returned, but completely changed. He rebuilt himself mentally and physically, forming a new identity called the Maker. This wasn't just a name change, it represented the moment he abandoned the idea of being a normal hero. He believed that since he was smarter than everyone else, he shouldn't be limited by their rules, emotions, or morals. He wanted to reshape the world based on pure logic and perfect design, no matter the cost. As the Maker, Reed became cold, ruthless, and detached, created engineered life forms, and experimented on reality itself like it was a tool. He didn't want to destroy humanity for fun. He wanted to reshape it into something he believed would be superior, and that's what made his villain era so scary. He wasn't chaotic or emotional. He was calm, calculated, and fully convinced that he was right. His actions eventually made him one of the most dangerous beings in the multiverse. He became a major antagonist, not just to the Ultimate Universe, but later to the main Marvel Universe as well. The Maker believed that the only future worth building was one designed by him, one controlled by pure intelligence instead of human nature, and this obsession became his entire identity. Reed becoming the Maker is one of the clearest examples of how even the smartest hero can become a villain when they lose empathy. Reed didn't fall because of corruption or possession. Reed fell because he stopped valuing people as people. He started seeing reality as something he had the right to rewrite, and that shift turned Marvel's brightest mind into one of its most terrifying threats. Apocalypse. His story begins in ancient Egypt, where his grey skin and unusual appearance made him an outcast long before anyone knew what a mutant was. Instead of breaking him, that isolation hardened him. He embraced a philosophy of survival of the fittest, convinced that only the strong deserve to live. From the moment he gained power, Apocalypse stopped seeing people as individuals and started seeing them as pieces in a brutal evolutionary chess. If you weren't strong enough to survive him, he believed you didn't deserve to exist at all. As if being one of the most powerful mutants ever wasn't enough, Apocalypse later bonded with celestial technology, enhancing his abilities to godlike levels. This upgrade transformed him from a dangerous warlord into a planet-level threat. He could rewrite matter, reshape his body into any form, and amplify his strength, durability, and intelligence beyond comprehension. With celestial tech, Apocalypse fueled. Entire populations were wiped out simply because he considered them weak or unworthy. In his eyes, genocide wasn't cruelty, it was maintenance. In Marvel canon, he helped trigger the Bronze Age collapse, a period of chaos that brought down multiple ancient civilizations. Famine, mass migrations, millions suffered, and to Apocalypse, that was proof his philosophy worked. While humans struggled to rebuild their world, he saw it as a necessary purge. And this wasn't a supervillain blowing up a city. This was a godlike being shaping human history through that. And because he became a global threat, Apocalypse fought in one of the most brutal wars in mutant history, the battle to protect the ancient mutant nation of Okara from the demonic hordes of Ament. Apocalypse slaughtered demons by the thousands, maybe millions, carving a reputation as one of the most feared beings in two dimensions. This war shaped him into someone who believed that constant battle was the natural state of life. If you weren't fighting, you were already dead, and if you were dead, you were weak. It's no surprise he carried this philosophy into every era he touched, and he doesn't regret anything he's done. He doesn't see himself as evil or cruel. He sees himself as evolution's necessary hand. He has killed civilizations, destroyed empires, triggered world-ending wars, and committed more mass murder than most Marvel villains combined. And yet, if you ask him whether he went too far, he'd tell you he didn't go far enough. No. He predates almost everything: stars, galaxies, and civilizations. He was born in the endless black void before the universe even had light. When the Celestials showed up and created the first stars, Noel reacted with pure hatred. He despised creation itself, and that hatred shaped his entire existence. He became a god of darkness who sought to extinguish every flicker of life, light, and hope across the cosmos. And he simply believes existence was a mistake. To fight the gods who dared bring light into his universe, Noel forged the first symbiote, the protoform of what would eventually become Venom. Then he crafted thousands more, forming the monstrous Clintar Horde and the legendary weapon All Black the Necrosword, a blade capable of killing gods. Over millions of years, Noel spread his symbiote armies across the universe, conquering planets, slaughtering civilizations, and corrupting entire species. Every world that encountered him either fell or became part of his living darkness. And he doesn't just kill mortals, he kills gods, pantheons, and cosmic entities. He used the Necrosword to butcher celestials, the same beings who judge planets and reshape galaxies. galaxies. That alone puts his kill count at a near incomprehensible level. In various wars across cosmic history, Null extinguished systems, wiped out divine species, and left entire sectors of the universe in ruin. His hatred of creation wasn't limited to life. It extended to the very architects of existence. If something glowed, breathed, shined, or dared to grow, he hunted it. During the King in Black event, he descended upon Earth with a symbiote dragon army covering the entire planet in living darkness. Major heroes were possessed, cities fell, and the sky literally turned black. Billions were at risk as Null tried to snuff out Earth's light permanently. The scale of destruction wasn't just global, it was cosmic. He bound celestials, corrupted gods, and nearly rewrote the fabric of reality using symbiote-empowered void energy. No other villain had ever attacked Earth with that much force at one time. So like I mentioned, Thanos kills for philosophy, Galactus kills to survive, Apocalypse kills for evolution, but Null kills because he wants nothing to exist. His end goal is a universe returned to the silent black void he originally came from. He wants total erasure. Magus. He's an evil version of Adam Warlock. In one timeline, Adam slowly loses his soul, embraces cold logic, and transforms into the Magus, a tyrant who abandons empathy and decides that all life must serve him or die. Unlike other villains who want power or revenge, Magus believes he is the final stage of evolution. He doesn't just kill. This guy builds empires of murder. At the height of his power, he created the Universal Church of Truth, one of the largest and most genocidal organizations in Marvel's cosmic history. The church spread across galaxies, converting or exterminating entire civilizations. If a species accepted Magus as their god, they were enslaved. If they resisted, they were wiped out. Billions died under the church's doctrine of purification, all because one corrupted warlock decided the universe needed to be cleansed of weakness. This version of Adam combines cosmic power, magical ability, and near immortality. He can wrap matter, manipulate energy, shapeshift, and appear anywhere he wants. In some stories, he exists outside of normal time, meaning killing him doesn't actually stop him. He is a nightmare for cosmic heroes because he doesn't just invade worlds, he rewrites timelines and possibilities. In alternate realities, he successfully conquered the universe, leaving behind galaxies full of corpses and worshippers too terrified to rebel. During cosmic events like Infinity War, he proved how far his ambition goes. He wanted control over all existence. He once attempted to steal the combined power of the Infinity Gems to rewrite reality in his image, and he came terrifyingly close to succeeding. Even Thanos was nervous about him, and that should tell you something. Magus isn't content with mass murder on a planetary scale. He dreams of a universe where he is the only will that matters, and everyone else is either a slave or dust. He represents what happens when Warlock loses the balance completely. He's the living embodiment of corruption, perfection turned toxic, and heroism twisted into authoritarianism. His legacy is written in destroyed galaxies and indoctrinated civilizations, making him one of Marvel's most terrifying mass murderers because his existence proves that even the greatest heroes can become the universe's deadliest villains. Bullseye. When you talk about Marvel's most dangerous street-level villains, Bullseye is always near the top of any list. He's a weapon in human form, a man who turns anything in his hand into a lethal projectile. He first appeared in Daredevil 131 in 1976, and from the beginning, he stood out as a villain who didn't just want to defeat heroes, he wanted to break them mentally and emotionally. His accuracy is legendary: guns, knives, playing cards, paper clips, pencils, it doesn't matter. If Bullseye can hold it, he can kill you with it. He has no powers in the traditional sense, but his skills is so advanced, it feels superhuman. His reflexes, hand-eye coordination, and unerring aim make him a nightmare for anyone on the streets of New York. But his skills are only part of the equation. He's not an assassin for hire simply because he's good at it. He genuinely enjoys the act of killing. Murder is his art form, his obsession. He doesn't care about the money or the politics of the job, he cares about the thrill, the power of taking a life, and the psychological torment he can inflict on his enemies. Nowhere is this more clear than in his long-standing rivalry with Daredevil. To Bullseye, Daredevil is more than just a target, he's a challenge. He knows that Matt's morality is his greatest strength and his biggest vulnerability, and Bullseye loves nothing more than exploiting that. And one of his most infamous moments is the murder of Elektra in Daredevil 181. Elektra, then serving as Kingpin's assassin and Matt Murdock's lover, was brutally killed by Bullseye, not out of professional obligation, but out of spite and twisted enjoyment. He wanted to claim the title of Kingpin's top assassin and to emotionally destroy Daredevil in one move, and he succeeded. And he didn't stop there. He later went after Karen Page, another of Matt's great loves, killing her in cold blood. As of his abilities, he has peak human agility and reflexes, sadistic creativity, and master of infiltration and assassination, able to reach even high-profile targets. And there is no redemption arc. He is pure sociopath, incapable of remorse, fully aware of his monstrosity, and reveling in it. He kills because he wants to, and because he knows it breaks heroes in ways Fist never could. He doesn't need armies, he doesn't need schemes, all he needs is you and whatever he's holding in his hand. Mr. Negative. Among Marvel's street-level villains, Mr. Negative is one of the most visually striking and conceptually fascinating antagonists. Known in his civilian life as Martian Lee, Mr. Negative is a respected philanthropist by day and a ruthless mystical crime lord by night. He first appeared in The Amazing Spider-Man 546 in 2008. At first glance, Martian Lee is the very image of a community hero, a compassionate benefactor running feasts, a shelter providing food and support to the homeless of New York City, including Peter Parker's Aunt May. He earns the trust of the community, the admiration of local leaders, and even Spider-Man's respect. But beneath that benevolent surface lies a monstrous alter ego. Due to a past experimental drug smuggling operation gone wrong, Martian Lee's body and soul were split by a mysterious energy source known as Dark Force and Light Force, creating a literal dark half, Mr. Negative, and this corrupted persona controls the Inner Demons, a deadly gang outfitted in black and white suits and demon-like masks. Under his leadership, the Inner Demons conquer territory, run smuggling rings, and execute high-profile assassinations, all while their boss continues his double life as the humble Martian Lee. His powers include Dark Force and Light Force energy manipulation, Corrupting Touch, where Mr. Negative can infect people with his energy, turning even the purest heroes into loyal servants, and enhance physical strength and agility. And his charitable persona gives him public trust and access to political power, while his dark side rules the criminal underworld with fear and mystical force. He hides in plain sight, using his reputation as a shield while expanding his empire beneath the noses of the heroes trying to stop him. One of his most chilling tactics is corrupting heroes and allies, turning their values against them. When he corrupts someone, they don't simply obey him, they believe in his cause, fighting for him with zeal as if it were their own choice. And even Spider-Man, usually immune to mind control, once fell under Mr. Negative's influence. And what adds depth to his character is the question of whether Martian Lee is truly innocent, or if he secretly enjoys the power of his darker half. While some stories suggest Martian Lee is horrified by Mr. Negative's actions, others hint that the line between man and monster is far blurrier than he admits. Mephisto is one of the most purely evil and manipulative villains in the Marvel Universe, a demonic entity who thrives on lies, corruption, and the destruction of souls. While he is often compared to the devil, Mephisto isn't exactly Satan. He's a Hell Lord, a demonic being who rules over his own pocket dimension that resembles hell. He first appeared in Silver Surfer 3 in 1968, and he is less of a traditional supervillain and more of a cosmic level manipulator, always lurking in the shadows, striking deals that ruin lives, literally. Mephisto's greatest weapon isn't brute strength or armies, it's temptation. He thrives on making Faustian bargains, offering desperate people their greatest desires, power or love or a second chance, in exchange for their soul, or something even worse. And he always delivers, but with an evil catch. Whether it's twisting a wish into a curse or demanding impossible sacrifices, Mephisto's goal is always to corrupt, degrade, and own the soul of the person he's helping. One of his most infamous moments came in the One More Day storyline, where Peter Parker, desperate to save Aunt May, agrees to let Mephisto erase his marriage to Mary Jane Watson from existence, in exchange for her survival. And it was a decision that fans hated, because it ended years of storytelling, and it also showed just how cruel Mephisto could be. He didn't want Peter's soul, he wanted his happiness. He wanted to watch Peter live with the pain of loss and regret, forever knowing why he gave up. And that's the kind of villain Mephisto is. And beyond Spider-Man, Mephisto has tormented the Silver Surfer, Doctor Strange, Ghost Rider, Scarlet Witch, and in fact, during the Infinity Gauntlet saga, Mephisto tried to manipulate Thanos himself, and he's also heavily tied to Ghost Rider's origin, being the one responsible for Johnny Blaze's transformation, after tricking him into selling his soul. And as far as powers go, Mephisto can manipulate reality and time, reshape memories, trap souls and torment them forever, take on any form and create illusions, summon demons and control armies of the damned, and regenerate and resurrect himself indefinitely, as long as evil and sin exist. And what makes Mephisto especially evil isn't just what he does, it's why he does it. He doesn't want to conquer the world or build empires, he just wants to watch people suffer, fall, and lose themselves. He feeds off pain, sin, and despair like a parasite. He's a smiling, smooth-talking force of corruption that destroys lives just because he can. The Green Goblin. He's not just one of Spider-Man's greatest enemies, he is one of the most vile, cruel, and deranged villains in all of Marvel Comics. Beneath the Goblin mask is Norman Osborn, a wealthy industrialist, scientific genius, and perhaps, most dangerously, a man whose mind is completely unhinged. First appearing in The Amazing Spider-Man 14, the Green Goblin has become the symbol of chaos, pushing Peter Parker to his emotional and moral limits. Norman began as the head of Oscorp Industries, a brilliant but cutthroat businessman who sought greater power through experimental enhancement. But after exposing himself to a strength augmenting serum, Norman gained superhuman strength, agility, and a healing factor, but at the cost of his sanity. The serum shattered his mind, unleashing the Green Goblin persona, a monstrous alter ego obsessed with tormenting and destroying Spider-Man. But he doesn't just want to beat Spider-Man, he wants to break him. He targets Peter's loved ones, stalks him in and out of the costume, and treats the battle as a sick, twisted game. He wants suffering, and he's willing to go to horrifying lengths to achieve it. His most infamous act came in the legendary The Night Gwen Stacy died, when he threw Gwen Stacy off the George Washington Bridge, resulting in one of the most traumatic moments in comic book history. And this wasn't a move to achieve world domination, it was a message for Peter Parker personally. I know who you are, I can reach who you love, and I will take everything from you. And as the Green Goblin, Norman Osborn uses pumpkin bombs, often rigged to explode or emit deadly gases, razor bats and electroshock gloves, and his infamous Goblin Glider, a flying weaponized vehicle, and he has superhuman strength, stamina and reflexes thanks to the Goblin Serum. But what truly makes him one of Marvel's most evil villains is that even without the costume, Norman Osborn is still a monster. He's been the head of Hammer, led the Dark Avengers, impersonated Iron Man, and manipulated world governments, all while presenting himself as a savior. And the Green Goblin is the kind of villain who never stays dead and never stops plotting. Even when he's defeated, you know he's still watching, still planning the next tragedy. Thanos. He's arguably Marvel's most iconic cosmic villain, and his goals are often far more philosophical and infinitely more deadly. Nicknamed the Mad Titan, Thanos debuted in Iron Man 55 in 1973. From the moment he appeared, he was a force of nature, someone who could challenge gods and reshape reality. Born on Titan, one of Saturn's moons, Thanos is part of the Eternals, but unlike the others, Thanos was born with a deviant gene, giving him his distinct monstrous appearance and marking him as an outcast. Isolated and obsessed with death from a young age, Thanos developed a morbid fascination with nihilism and cosmic destruction, eventually falling in love with the physical embodiment of death herself. And driven by this obsession, Thanos has committed unimaginable atrocities. In the comics, he once wiped out half of all life in the universe, using the Infinity Gauntlet, which housed the 6 Infinity Gems. But here's the twisted part. He didn't do it for conquest, he did it to impress death. So for Thanos, mass genocide was a romantic gesture. And even without the gauntlet, Thanos possesses superhuman strength and durability, genius-level intellect, and mastery of science, mysticism and technology, and cosmic-level energy manipulation. And what makes Thanos so evil is that he truly believes he's doing the right thing. He sees existence as chaotic, wasteful, and unsustainable. Whether it's for Death's love or to balance the universe, his logic is always chillingly calm. And while the Marvel Cinematic Universe version of Thanos gave him a more utilitarian motivation, wanting to eliminate half of all life to conserve resources, the comic version kills for the sake of cosmic despair and obsession. And he doesn't want to save the universe, he wants to end it. He's a cosmic idea, a symbol of inevitable death and existential dread. He's what happens when a god loses empathy but gains purpose, making him one of the most evil and unforgettable figures in all of Marvel lore. Cassandra Nova. She is one of the most twisted and terrifying villains the X-Men have ever faced. A psychic parasite born without a body who exists solely to destroy everything that makes life meaningful. She first appeared in New X-Men 114 in 2001 and instantly redefined what it meant to be an X-Men villain. Unlike Magneto or Apocalypse, who have ideologies or grand visions, Cassandra Nova is pure malice and nihilism, wrapped in a deceptively calm demeanor and psychic power that rivals and even surpasses Professor X himself. Cassandra is technically Charles Xavier's twin, but not in the traditional sense. She's a Momodre, a being from a dimension of thought, who tried to take over Charles' body in the womb. Since in her presence, Xavier lashed out with his mind, still unborn, and caused her body to miscarry. But she didn't die. Instead, her consciousness clung to life, slowly rebuilding a physical form over the years, fueled by rage and the desire to destroy everything Charles Xavier ever loved. And what makes Cassandra Nova so evil isn't just her power. It's her complete lack of empathy. She doesn't hate mutants because she fears them like humans often do. She hates life itself, and she sees the X-Men and their dream as a diseased world purging. and with her Omega-level telepathy, she has manipulated, tortured, and controlled some of the most powerful minds on Earth. She wants to cover the mind of Donald Trask, a descendant of the creator of the Sentinels, and use his DNA to reactivate a fleet of wild Sentinels, which she sent to Genosha, killing 16 million mutants in minutes. And that wasn't an act of war, it was genocide, and she didn't blink doing it. Her psychic abilities are off the charts, with Omega-level telepathy rivaling Professor X, mental possession and manipulation, astral projection and body swapping, regeneration, and pseudo-immortality, as she can rebuild herself even after destruction, and emotionless intellect, making her cold, calculated, and impossible to reason with. And in her battle with the X-Men, turned people against each other and forced Xavier to walk again just so she could cripple him herself. And she inverted the dream of peaceful coexistence into a nightmare, and she did it with a calm, terrifying smile. She often appears collected, even motherly, but her words are full of venom, and her actions speak of a deep existential hatred for existence itself. She wants to unmake things, to erase hope, peace and connection piece by piece. And in the Marvel universe that is filled with godlike villains and intergalactic threats, Cassandra Nova stands apart as one of the most psychologically disturbing and morally bankrupt. She is what happens when thought itself turns evil. And she's not just a threat to mutants, she's a threat to what it means to be human. Mr. Sinister. He might be one of the most dangerous masterminds in the entire Marvel universe. Born Nathaniel Essex, a 19th century scientist obsessed with evolution, Sinister is the kind of villain who plays not just people, but entire bloodlines and generations, like pieces on a chessboard, and his manipulation is about controlling destiny itself. Sinister was transformed into the genetically enhanced near-immortal being we know today by Apocalypse, but rather than becoming a loyal servant, Sinister forged his own path, filled with obsession over mutation, evolution, and genetic perfection. He doesn't just plot on a short-term scale, he plays the long game, often spanning centuries. His manipulation operates on multiple levels. He has experimented on countless mutants, splicing DNA, creating clones, and even future generations of mutants to serve his secret agendas. And he creates copies of people, sometimes they don't even know they're clones, using them as double agents or spare parts for his experiments. He's known for blackmailing, coercing, and deceiving heroes and villains alike, often making them pawns in plans they don't even realize they're part of. And in the Krakoa era, Sinister plays a public role as one of the Quiet Council members, pretending to work for mutant prosperity while secretly running his own twisted schemes in the shadows. He revels in being 10 steps ahead, gleefully toying with others even as he plots their downfall. In many stories, by the time heroes catch on to Sinister's machinations, it's already far too late. A prime example of his manipulation is in the House of X Powers of X storyline, where it's revealed that Sinister secretly maintains a library of mutant DNA, cataloging the powers and potential of every mutant alive and dead. He hides this from his fellow mutants, all while acting like a harmless eccentric on the Quiet Council. But in truth, Sinister is laying the groundwork for his own future ascension, potentially creating the perfect mutant race under his control. And things only escalate in Sins of Sinister in 2023. He corrupts Krakoa's resurrection protocols, ensuring that every mutant brought back to life carries a piece of himself inside them. He essentially infects the entire mutant population with his influence, turning Krakoa into a chicken bomb. Mr. Sinister is a puppet master of flesh and fate. He treats lives, identities, and even futures like tools in his grotesque genetic puzzle, constantly reshaping the board to suit his endless curiosity and ambition. And what's most chilling, you often won't realize you are a piece in his game until it's already over. Carnage. He is one of the most violently sadistic and irredeemable villains in Marvel. Born from the offspring of the Venom symbiote and bonded to the serial killer Cletus Cassidy, Carnage represents the worst traits of both species, symbiotes and humans, amplified to horrifying extremes. He first appeared in The Amazing Spider-Man 361 and immediately positioned himself as a darker, deadlier shadow of Venom. Cletus Cassidy was already a monster before he ever touched a symbiote. As a child, he murdered his grandmother, tortured animals, and burned down his orphanage. He believed life was meaningless, and chaos was the only truth. So when the Carnage symbiote bonded with him, unlike Venom, which still holds some moral boundaries, it found a host who completely embraced its hunger and savagery. The result was something Spider-Man has never faced before, a being of pure evil with no motive other than to kill, destroy, and cause pain. Carnage is stronger, faster, and more unpredictable than both Spider-Man and Venom. and his symbiote can form deadly weapons from its own flesh, create tentacles, blades, and spikes, and is often immune to traditional weaknesses, like sonic attacks and fire due to his deeper bond with Cassidy. But it's not just the power that makes Carnage terrifying, it's the mindset. Cassidy doesn't want control, revenge, or power, he kills for fun, and he wants everyone to see it, to feel it, to be consumed by the same chaos he lives in. And over the years, Carnage has left a bloody trail across the Marvel Universe, from mass murdering civilians to taking on entire cities, and he's fought Spider-Man, Venom, Deadpool, and even the Avengers. And in storylines like Maximum Carnage, he leads a cult-like group of killers, spreading death like wildfire across New York. And in Absolute Carnage, he resurrects himself and becomes stronger than ever, hunting down every former symbiote host to tear their codices from their spines. And yet what makes Carnage so chilling isn't just what he does, it's that he enjoys every moment of it. There's no redemption arc, no inner conflict. He's not a villain trying to prove a point. He's a serial killer with the powers of an alien war machine, and a complete lack of empathy or restraint. So Carnage is a reminder that sometimes evil is just evil. Arachnex is basically the nightmare version of what would happen if Spider-Man and Wolverine were fused, and then stripped of all their morals. He comes from Earth 4587. Instead of being a hero, Arachnex is leader of the Revengers, basically the dark version of the Avengers. And unlike Peter or Logan, he doesn't hold back. Think of him as Spider-Man's abilities plus Wolverine's lethality, with zero conscience. On paper, Spider-Man and Wolverine already cover each other's weaknesses, and Arachnex proves what happens when you combine them fully. You get Spider-Man's insane speed, agility, strength, mixed with Wolverine's healing factor, claws, and combat experience. That alone would already be broken, but Arachnex goes even further. His body isn't normal, it's made of living, self-repairing webbing, meaning he can regenerate in ways even Wolverine can't. Catch him, he just rebuilds himself instantly. And what really makes Arachnex scary isn't just the powers, it's how he uses them. Spider-Man usually pulls his punches, Wolverine, even at his worst, still has a code. Arachnex has neither. He stalks, hunts, and kills without hesitation. In his universe, he even becomes the arch-enemy of Reed Richards after murdering Mariko Yashida. That alone tells you how far gone he is, making him easily one of the deadliest spider variants ever created. And what makes Arachnex even crazier is how rare he is. Reed literally searches the multiverse and can't find another version like him. That means this fusion is unique. To deal with him, Reed recruits multiple Spider-Man and Wolverine variants, basically throwing them at Arachnex like disposable soldiers, and even then, it's not enough. Annihilus. He comes from the other side of reality, the twisted, hostile realm called the Negative Zone. He was never meant to be a hero or even a normal villain. From the moment he gained intelligence, his entire worldview revolved around one idea: death is coming, and he must strike first. This paranoia shaped him into a ruthless conqueror who believes survival means destroying everything before it can threaten him. So he's driven by pure instinct, and that makes his violence terrifyingly natural. Long before he threatened the main Marvel universe, Annihilus spent centuries wiping out species across the Negative Zone. He experimented civilizations, absorbed their technology, and forced survivors into slavery. His empire was built on constant warfare. He didn't allow rival species to exist. By the time he reached full power, he had already committed galactic-scale genocide in an entire dimension. The Fantastic Four and other heroes who crossed into the zone quickly learned that Annihilus wasn't just a warlord, he was an extinction-level event with wings. He reached legendary status as a mass murderer during the Annihilation storyline. He led an enormous army called the Annihilation Wave out of the Negative Zone and into the universe, destroying entire solar systems. Planets were stripped clean, empires were crushed overnight, billions died before anyone even understood what the wave was. Even cosmic powerhouses like the Kree, Skrulls, and Nova Corps couldn't stop him. The wave was so devastating that it permanently changed the balance of power in the Marvel cosmos. He even defeated Quasar, the projector of the cosmos, and literally tore him apart. And that shows you the sheer scale of Annihilus's threat. He was a force of nature. Even Galactus, a being who devours planets, was temporarily captured and weaponized by Annihilus. So the message was clear: if someone as unstoppable as Galactus can be used like a battery, then the rest of the universe stands no chance. And the crazy part, he can't truly die. Every time he's defeated, he is reborn, often stronger or more determined than before. His hatred, paranoia, and hunger for control return with him, meaning the universe is stuck in a loop. Destroy Annihilus, and eventually he comes crawling back with another plan to wipe out everything. So basically he is a cosmic plague, destined to reappear again and again until the day he finally succeeds. Angel. He started out as one of the original X-Men, a rich kid who wanted to use his wings to help people and actually do something meaningful with his life. He always had that classic superhero vibe, noble, charming, caring and hopeful. But Warren also struggled internally more than people realized. His mutation made him feel different, like an outsider, and there were moments where his self-image was fragile, even if he tried to hide it behind confidence. Things took a darker turn after Warren lost his real feather wings. The Morlocks massacre, the trauma, the despair, all of that crushed him emotionally. Losing his wings didn't just mean losing his power. To him, it felt like his entire identity was ripped away from him. This moment broke his spirit, and Apocalypse took advantage of his weakness. Apocalypse looked for mutants who were vulnerable and easy to manipulate, and Warren was in perfect mental state for that. He made Warren believe there was no future left for him unless he accepted a new purpose. Apocalypse transformed him into one of his 4 horsemen, specifically the Horsemen of Death. Warren's organic wings were replaced by razor-sharp metal wings that could slice through almost anything and shoot deadly feather like projectiles. His skin turned blue, his mind was altered, and he became far more violent and cold. The hopeful, compassionate Angel was replaced by Archangel, a deadly, silent, almost emotionless killer who served Apocalypse without mercy. As Archangel, Warren actually attacked his own former teammates and was a real threat to the X-Men. His fall was personal and physical transformation combined with mental manipulation. He became the exact opposite of who he originally was. Over time, Warren did break free from Apocalypse's control and tried to regain his old life, but the damage remained deep inside him. Archangel wasn't something he simply got rid of. It stayed as a second personality, waiting to surface again under stress, trauma, or influence. For years in X-Men stories, this identity would come back and cause chaos again, so Warren would constantly battle between his original self and that darker version created by Apocalypse. Yes, Warren didn't choose to become evil because he wanted power. He was broken, and someone used that moment to reshape him into a weapon. King Thanos. He is not just another version of the Mad Titan, we're talking about Thanos at the end of time, after he's conquered the universe, defeated every hero, villain, and cosmic being, and is left with only one thing: regret. Introduced in Thanos 2016, King Thanos is a version of Thanos from the far future who succeeded in doing the impossible. He wiped out all of life and killed the Marvel Universe. Galactus, dead. The Celestials, gone. The Watchers, Ego, the Living Tribunal, even cosmic abstracts like Eternity and Infinity, all obliterated. Only Thanos remains, ruling from a throne made of bone and ash, accompanied by a few survivors, Cosmic Ghost Rider, his herald, and Hulk, mutated and enslaved as his pet, and a broken, silent world that obeys by default, because there's no one left to rebel. But here's the twist: he is not satisfied. In fact, he's tormented. With nothing left to kill, King Thanos realizes that true glory eludes him unless he can face one final opponent: himself. He summons his younger self through time, not to train him, not to advise him, but to kill him. Why? Because King Thanos knows the only being in the multiverse worthy of ending his wretched existence is himself, and he can't enter the afterlife until he defeats the final being he's never been able to slay, Lady Death, the personification of death itself. That's right, after all these years, Thanos still seeks to prove himself worthy of Death's love. And even after destroying gods, celestials, and cosmic entities, she still turns away, and his final goal is to earn her embrace. And to do that, he must complete the circle by dying at the hands of a better version of himself. So this storyline, Thanos Wins, revolves around the present-day Thanos helping or hindering his future self's final plan. Anyway, together, they battle the hammer-wielding surfer, aka the Fallen One, the universe's last survivor with the Annihilation Wave behind him. And after disposing of the Cosmic Ghost Rider, the Fallen One was attacked by the Hulk, who he had inadvertently unleashed. And upon seeing what had become of his friend, Norrin calmed him down, making him return to his human form moments before King Thanos stabbed both in the back with the Twilight Sword. The Fallen One is defeated and Death appeared. Eventually, King Thanos reveals his greatest fear, that Death herself has abandoned him. His entire journey, his obsession with destruction and balance, was for her love and approval. But in killing everything, he made himself irrelevant, even to death. Realizing that this version of himself is a failure, young Thanos rejects that future. He returns to his own time, swearing never to become what he saw. And this act erases King Thanos from existence, wiping the timeline where he ruled and leaving the Mad Titan with a new path ahead. So King Thanos got what he wanted, and it meant absolutely nothing. The Lizard is the result of a man trying to heal himself, only to lose his humanity in the process. First appearing in The Amazing Spider-Man 6 in 1963, Dr. Kurt Connors was a brilliant scientist and gifted surgeon who served in the military until he tragically lost his right arm during his service. Obsessed with the idea of regrowing his lost limb, Connors turned to reptiles for inspiration, fascinated by how lizards could regenerate their tails and limbs, and believing he could harness that same biological power, he developed a serum based on lizard DNA and tested it on himself, hoping to restore his arm. At first, the serum worked. Kurt's arm grew back, but the effects didn't stop there. The serum kept altering his DNA, transforming him into a massive, reptilian creature. In this form, Connors retained his scientific mind at first, but the more the lizard took control, the more he lost his humanity. Eventually, the lizard became a savage, uncontrollable force with one terrifying goal: to wipe out humanity and replace it with a new race of lizard people, believing it's the next step in evolution. What makes the lizard so tragic isn't just the monster, it's the man trapped inside. Kurt Connors is a good person and helped others with similar disabilities. He never intended to become a villain. The emotional core of the lizard's story comes from Peter Parker's relationship with Kurt. Peter admires Connors as a mentor and a friend, often working with him on scientific projects. So whenever Kurt transforms into the lizard, Spider-Man isn't just trying to stop a threat, he is desperately trying to save someone he cares about. Unlike villains like Green Goblin or Venom, Spider-Man doesn't want to hurt the lizard, he wants to bring Kurt back. And the tragedy deepens because the cycle never really ends. No matter how many times Kurt finds a cure or regains control, something always pulls him back, whether it's the temptation to use the serum again, an accident that triggers his transformation, or the lizard personally re-emerging on its own. So Kurt Connors is forever locked in a battle between the man and the monster. Victor Von Doom, aka Dr. Doom. He's often viewed as the ultimate Marvel supervillain, a genius sorcerer scientist driven by his desire for power and dominance. But beneath the iconic metal mask and the iron rule of Latveria, Doom is a profoundly tragic character. He's not just a man seeking control, he's someone who truly believes he is the only one who can save the world. Born to a Romani family, in the small, impoverished nation of Latveria, Victor's mother, Cynthia Von Doom, was a sorceress who made a deal with Mephisto, and when the bargain went wrong, she was killed. And Victor's father later died trying to protect him from the ruling class. Orphaned and consumed by grief, Doom grew up obsessed with two things: mastering science and magic to save his mother's soul, and destroying anyone who dared to hurt him or his people. From the very beginning, Doom wasn't driven by greed. He was driven by loss and by a desire to correct the injustices that had stolen his family from him. As his genius blossomed, he was granted a scholarship to Empire State University, where he met Reed Richards, and it was there that Doom's pride sealed his fate. When Reed noticed a flaw in Doom's experiment designed to contact the dead, specifically his mother, Doom ignored him. The machine exploded, leaving Victor horribly scarred, and fueling his hatred for Reed. Victor blamed Richards for his failure and left the US, traveling the world until he discovered a hidden order of monks who helped him craft his new iconic armor and mask. From that moment, Dr. Doom was born, and he never looked back. In many ways, he could have been the world's greatest hero. His intelligence rivals anyone in the Marvel Universe, and his mastery of both science and sorcery makes him nearly unstoppable. He has built time machines, created world-altering technologies, cured diseases, and even wielded the power of gods, such as when he stole the power cosmic from Galactus or ruled over reality itself during Secret Wars. But no matter how much power Doom acquires, it is never enough. Because deep down, Victor Von Doom is still that wounded child trying to fix a broken world by ruling over it. In Doom's mind, the only way to save humanity is to control it completely. He genuinely believes that his rule would bring peace, stability, and order. And the terrifying part? In many stories, he is right. Under Doom's iron fist, Latveria thrives. His people are safe, well-fed, and free from crime. But they are also prisoners of his absolute authority. Doom's tragedy is that he doesn't know any other way to protect people except through domination. To him, freedom leads to chaos, and only his will can create a perfect world. Another heartbreaking aspect of Dr. Doom is his relationship with Reed Richards. Doom sees Reed as the living reminder of the man he could have been if he had chosen a different path. Doom's hatred for Reed is deeply personal, rooted not just in competition, but in the painful belief that Reed may, in fact, be smarter than him. And for Doom, who believes himself to be the most brilliant man alive, that possibility is unbearable. He is a man who started with noble intentions, and every evil act, every invasion, and every horrific invention comes from a place of wanting to create a world where no one suffers as he once did. But by trying to eliminate suffering through total control, Doom became the very tyrant he once despised. Fu Manchu. He wasn't originally a Marvel character. He came from early 20th century pulp novels by Sax Rohmer, where he embodied one of the most harmful, racist tropes in Western fiction, the Yellow Peril mastermind. When Marvel introduced Shang-Chi in the 1970s, they licensed Fu Manchu as his father and main antagonist. At the time, they wanted a martial arts comic that felt exotic to Western readers, and unfortunately, that meant digging up a character built entirely on racist stereotypes. In the comics, Fu Manchu was portrayed as a cold, calculating genius who wanted global domination, making him a classic villain, but also an extremely problematic one. In Marvel Comics, Fu Manchu wasn't just an evil warlord, he was Shang-Chi's violent, manipulative, emotionally abusive father. He raised Shang-Chi from birth to be the perfect living weapon, isolating him from the world and brainwashing him with half-truths. Shang-Chi only discovered the truth when he confronted his father on a mission and realized he'd been trained to serve evil. This betrayal became the foundation of Shang-Chi's character arc, a son trying to escape the shadow of a monster who treated him like property. The dynamic was intense and interesting, but it was also tangled in outdated racial imagery. Another huge issue with Fu Manchu in Marvel Comics was legal rights. Marvel didn't own the character, they were renting him. When the license expired in the 1980s, Marvel suddenly couldn't even say his name. That put the company in an awkward spot, especially since Shang-Chi's entire backstory was tied to Fu Manchu. To avoid lawsuits, Marvel had to gradually pull back, referring to him only as my father, the master, or the sorcerer. Eventually, they revealed his real name in the Marvel Universe was Zhang Zhu, retconning everything so Shang-Chi could continue existing without the racist baggage or the legal problems. So Marvel decided to take the problem head-on. They reworked Fu Manchu into Zhang Zhu, a centuries-old sorcerer who led a secret cult and experimented with immortality. He was still evil, but now he was a Marvel origin villain instead of a racist caricature imported from old novels. Writers explored his role as a manipulator, a tyrant, and a father who saw his own children as tools. They turned the evil Asian mastermind trope into a more complex and culturally respected narrative, where Shang-Chi's battle was no longer tied to a harmful stereotype, but to a more personal and grounded family conflict. Romulus. When he first appeared, readers expected a mysterious new Wolverine villain. Instead, Marvel decided he had secretly been controlling Wolverine's life from the very beginning. Suddenly, every major moment in Logan's history, the wars he fought, the tragedies he lived through, the Weapon X program, even personal relationships, were all supposedly part of Romulus's master plan. It wasn't exciting. It felt like someone dumped a bucket of bad fanfiction onto decades of storytelling. This character embodies the worst version of the I caused everything in your life trope. It's the kind of cheap storytelling where a writer introduces a brand new character and pretends they were secretly important the whole time. Wolverine's life is defined by pain, randomness, war, bad luck, and trauma. But that's what made him compelling. Turning all of that into a conspiracy planned by one Fury, Roman werewolf guy, made Logan's entire history feel fake, neat, and overly controlled. Romulus removed depth. Villains like Magneto, Sabretooth, and Omega Red work because they have motives, worldviews, and emotional connections to Logan. Romulus doesn't. His character is basically I'm ancient, I'm evil, and I mess with Wolverine because reasons. He has no charisma, no believable philosophy, no hunching backstory, just vague monologues about evolution and dominance. He's a plot device wrapped in fur, created solely to justify retcons that nobody wanted. Without any real personality, there's nothing memorable about him except how much damage he caused to the lore. Logan is the product of war, heartbreak, betrayal, trauma, and survival, not destiny. Romulus completely trampled that theme by making it seem like Wolverine wasn't self-made at all. Logan became a puppet for some shadowy Sabretooth mastermind. This retcon weakened him by stripping away his agency and making him feel like a chess piece rather than a man. So Romulus made such a mess that even Marvel quietly backed away from him. Fans rejected the idea, storylines using him underperformed, and later writers basically pretended he never existed. Dark Phoenix Cyclops. He's an evil version of Scott Summers that shows what happens when the Phoenix Force merges with one of the most disciplined, strategic, and dangerous X-Men. Unlike Jean Grey, who struggled with the Phoenix's overwhelming power due to her emotional nature, Cyclops is a battle-hardened leader, which makes his descent into darkness even more devastating. Scott Summers has always been one of the X-Men's most controlled members, and his entire life has been about controlling his power, maintaining order, and leading the X-Men to ensure the survival of mutants. But when the Phoenix Force chooses him as its new host, all of that discipline is shattered. Instead of being bound by his usual limits, Cyclops is finally free to unleash his full potential, free from doubt, and free from any restraints on his power. He has appeared in multiple storylines, but his most famous transformation happened in Avengers vs. X-Men in 2012, when the Phoenix Force split into 5 hosts, creating the Phoenix Five: Cyclops, Emma Frost, Namor, Magic, and Colossus. At first, Cyclops and the others used their newfound power to reshape the world, ending war, famine, and suffering. But as their power grew, their morality faded, and Scott became increasingly authoritarian, convinced that he alone knew what was best for mutant kind. Cyclops clashed with the Avengers, and his ideology became twisted as he genuinely believed that the world should be reshaped in his vision, and anyone who opposed him was an enemy of evolution itself. And he even killed his mentor, Professor X. So the man who once led the X-Men under Xavier's dream of coexistence now saw himself as the only true savior of mutants, willing to destroy anyone in his way. Scott embraced the Phoenix Force as a tool for change. He didn't just want power for himself, he wanted to force the world to evolve, whether it wanted to or not. Eventually, Cyclops was defeated when the Phoenix Force was stripped from him, but the damage was done. He had crossed the line he could never return from, and his actions led to a permanent fracture in the mutant community, as many began to question if he had been right all along. Even after losing the Phoenix, Scott continued down a darker path, leading a more militant, revolutionary version of the X-Men. In short, Dark Phoenix Cyclops is the nightmare version of what the X-Men could become if they stopped fighting for peace and started forcing their rule onto the world. Captain Hydra. He is one of the most shocking and controversial evil versions of Captain America, a version of Steve Rogers who is revealed to have been loyal to Hydra all along. This dark twist was introduced in Captain America Steve Rogers 1 in 2016, and it turned the symbol of freedom and justice into the face of oppression and control. Captain Hydra exists in the main Marvel timeline, making his betrayal all the more personal and devastating. The origin of this version of Cap comes from the storyline known as Secret Empire. In this event, the sentient cosmic artifact known as Kobik, a living cosmic cube with the mind of a child, was manipulated by Hydra to rewrite reality. Kobik altered Steve Rogers' past, changing his memories so that he truly believed he had been a Hydra sleeper agent since childhood. In his mind, he wasn't betraying his country, he had always been with Hydra. To everyone else, however, this twist came as an unthinkable betrayal. The man who carried the shield, who stood for liberty, who led the Avengers, was now wearing Hydra's logo on his uniform and declaring "Hail Hydra." This version of Steve took all of the strategic brilliance, leadership, and charisma of Captain America and turned them toward Hydra's cause. He didn't act like a mindless villain, he ran Hydra like a well-oiled machine, conquering the United States from within and imposing a new world order with terrifying efficiency. Under his leadership, heroes were imprisoned, rebels were crushed, and the world genuinely felt like hope was gone. Visually, he wore a dark green uniform that combined his traditional Captain America look with Hydra's serpent imagery. This was Steve Rogers himself, fully embracing a fascist ideology and using his legacy as a weapon to manipulate and control the people who once trusted him. For years, heroes and citizens alike looked up to Captain America as the moral central of the superhero community. Seeing him not only turn, but claim he had always been Hydra, shattered the moral of heroes like Spider-Man, Iron Man, and Black Widow. Even characters like Sam Wilson struggled to believe that their mentor and friend could do such things, and it forced them to step up in his place as symbols of true heroism. Ultimately, he was defeated when the real Steve Rogers, a version preserved inside the remnants of Kobik's mind, returned to reclaim his legacy and take down his Hydra counterpart. But the damage was already done. The world had watched Captain America become the villain, and even after his redemption, the scars of what happened lingered. Captain Hydra is one of Marvel's most unsettling evil variants because he takes the ultimate symbol of good and twists it into something monstrous. He shows what happens when hope becomes control, when freedom becomes tyranny, and when the person you trusted most becomes your greatest enemy. Out of all the dark versions of Marvel heroes, Captain Hydra hits the hardest because he represents the absolute fall of a hero. Mysterio. When you talk about manipulation, you have to mention Quentin Beck, the self-proclaimed master of illusions. He doesn't have mind control, he doesn't need magical powers, and he isn't a cosmic entity. But what makes Mysterio so dangerously manipulative is that he makes you question what is real, what is fake, and what is terrifyingly in between. Mysterio first appeared in The Amazing Spider-Man 13 in 1964 as a special effects wizard and stuntman turned supervillain. Unlike most Spidey's villains, Mysterio's talents come from pure human skill, not radioactive accidents or scientific experiments. But don't let that fool you. His illusions are so convincing, so immersive, that he can turn even the most grounded hero into a paranoid wreck. And what makes Mysterio's manipulation especially sinister is that he preys on perception. He uses holograms, drones, gas-based hallucinations, sound designed and elaborate stagecraft to bend reality around his victims. He can fake entire environments, making you think you're in a burning building, underwater, or stranded in a nightmare. He can impersonate anyone, making allies appear as enemies and enemies appear as loved ones. And he often layers his deceptions, so even when you think you've seen through his trick, it's just another illusion within an illusion. For Mysterio, it's not enough to defeat you physically. He wants to destroy you mentally. His goal is to make heroes doubt their senses, their decisions, and even their very sanity. He once made Spider-Man believe he had accidentally killed a man, shattering Peter's confidence. He tricked Daredevil into hallucinating and even manipulated Wolverine's senses, turning his feral instincts against his own allies. One of Mysterio's most disturbing manipulations came in the legendary Guardian Devil storyline, where he targeted Daredevil, exploiting Matt Murdock's Catholic guilt and personal tragedies. Mysterio orchestrated an entire campaign of psychological torment, including staged demonic possessions and false prophecies, pushing Daredevil to the brink of madness. The goal? To make Matt take his own life. That's how far Mysterio's manipulations go. And what makes Mysterio so compelling is that he forces heroes to fight battles inside their minds. He teaches them that brute strength and sharp reflexes mean nothing if your sense can be turned against you. He's a villain who turns perception itself into a weapon, and even when he's defeated, the lingering doubt he plants never fully fades. Mysterio is a master manipulator because he understands this fundamental weakness of every hero. Perception shapes reality, and if he controls your perception, he controls everything. Red Skull is a figure who embodies the absolute worst of humanity. He is hatred made flesh. First appearing in Captain America Comics 7 in 1941, he was introduced during World War II as a Nazi agent and Hitler's right hand, and over the decades, he has only grown more vile, more dangerous, and more relevant as a symbol of evil without remorse. He was an orphan raised in brutality, who found meaning in Nazi ideology and became a fanatical enforcer of fascism and genocide. Chosen by Hitler himself to be the embodiment of Nazi ideals, Schmidt adopted the Red Skull persona, donning a horrifying red mask, which eventually became his real face, and rising to become a master manipulator, tactician, and mass murderer. Red Skull wants to purify the world through violence, hate, and authoritarian control. What makes him especially terrifying is that he has no powers, yet he is capable of bringing down gods and legends through sheer cruelty, manipulation, and planning. And over the years he has stolen the Cosmic Cube, aka the Tesseract, and reshaped reality to his will, created sleeper agents and infiltrated governments, orchestrated terrorist plots that have wiped out thousands, and cloned Steve Rogers' body and transferred his own mind into it, and even merged with Professor X's brain, gaining Omega-level telepathic abilities and launching the Red Onslaught event. And his ideology is his greatest weapon. He wants to break people mentally and morally. And he's one of the few Marvel villains who represents real-world horrors. Fascism, racism, genocide, and oppression. And unlike other villains who evolve or sometimes redeem themselves, Red Skull remains a constant. He doesn't change. He waits, infecting societies with hate until the moment to strike again. And his greatest enemy, of course, is the symbol of freedom, compassion, and hope, Captain America. And their rivalry is more than just hero versus villain, it's ideology versus ideology, with Cap fighting for unity and Skull fighting for dominance and purity. And every time Captain stands tall, Red Skull is there, trying to prove that hate can be killed. It has to be constantly fought. So whether wielding cosmic artifacts, corrupting minds, or leading armies of fascists, Red Skull is one of the purest embodiments of evil in the Marvel Universe. He's not a villain you love to hate, he's a villain you just hate, because that's exactly what he wants to spread. Loki. When you think of manipulation in the Marvel Universe, the first name that leaps to mind is Loki. He is the undisputed god of mischief, a character who has turned deception into an art form, and whose schemes span centuries, dimensions, and even the very fabric of reality itself. But what makes Loki so dangerous is not just that he manipulates people, he makes them want to believe him. Born as the adopted son of Odin and the brother of Thor, Loki has always been an outsider, craving recognition, power, and validation. And while Thor was celebrated as the golden child of Asgard, Loki, born of Frost giant lineage, grew resentful. But unlike Thor, who would charge into battle with a hammer, Loki would rather win wars with words, illusions, and subtlety. What makes Loki's manipulation so effective is that he adapts his tactics to his target. If he's dealing with heroes, he plays on their ideals and compassion. And if he's facing villains, he tempts them with greed and power. Sometimes he'll offer truths wrapped in lies, or lies hidden inside truths. He's a character who understands the most effective manipulation isn't forcing people to do what you want, it's making them think it was their idea all along. Throughout Marvel history, he's instigated Ragnarok, the end of Asgardian civilization, multiple times, often pulling the strings from the shadows. He's manipulated the Avengers into fighting amongst themselves. He has tricked cosmic entities like Surtur and Hela, playing one power against another to further his own goals, and he has even manipulated his own future and past selves, rewriting his destiny to escape the cycle of villainy. But here's where Loki becomes even more fascinating. He isn't purely evil. Loki's relationship with manipulation is deeply tied to his own search for identity, and over time, he's become an anti-hero, even a reluctant savior, as seen in stories like Agent of Asgard and Journey into Mystery. In these arcs, Loki tries to escape the role the universe has written for him, to stop being the villain of the story. Yet, even when seeking redemption, manipulation remains his core method, showing that for Loki, deceit is as natural as breathing. And he's self-aware. He knows he is the god of lies. He embraces it, and sometimes he even turns his tricks inward, manipulating himself into becoming better or worse. Ultimately, Loki is the embodiment of manipulation done right. He's charming, brilliant, unpredictable, a master strategist, and always 5 steps ahead. Dormammu. He's a central antagonist in Marvel Comics, first appearing in Strange Tales 1-6 in 1964. He is a powerful, mystical entity and the ruler of the Dark Dimension, and he is one of the most powerful foes of Doctor Strange and a recurring threat to the Marvel multiverse. Dormammu is an interdimensional being of immense mystical power, possessing abilities that include energy projection, matter manipulation, immortality, and vast sorcery that rivals or surpasses that of any magic user in the Marvel universe. His powers are further augmented by the energies of the Dark Dimension, over which he has absolute control, allowing him to reshape its reality and command its denizens. Unlike many other magical characters whose powers derive from spells or external sources, Dormammu's powers are innate and make him a conduit of magical energy. Central to Dormammu's character is his ambition to expand his rule beyond the Dark Dimension. He aims to conquer other dimensions, including Earth, bringing them under his tyrannical control. And this ambition sets him on a collision course with Earth's Sorcerer Supreme, Doctor Strange. And over the decades, Dormammu and Doctor Strange have had numerous encounters, with Dormammu often attempting to invade Earth or expand his influence, only to be thwarted by Strange and his allies. And his influence extends beyond direct combat, as he often deals with other cosmic and mystical entities, manipulating lesser beings to do his bidding and forming alliances that serve his conquest goals, reflective of his overarching desire for dominance and control. Visually, Dormammu is depicted with a flaming head, and this iconic look underscores his status as a being of pure magical energy, devoid of a physical body as humans understand it. His presence in Marvel's stories is often a sign of high stakes and cosmic level threats, emphasizing the scale and seriousness of the challenges he poses. The Marquis of Death. He first appeared in Fantastic Four 562, and he is depicted as a supremely powerful mutant from an alternate reality, where he is the only mutant on Earth and possesses abilities that far exceed those of most other characters within the Marvel multiverse. His real name is Clyde Wickham, and his backstory reveals that he originally lived in an alternate 20th century where he accidentally killed all life on Earth due to his uncontrollable powers, and over time he becomes the Marquis of Death, a time-traveling, reality-wrapping supervillain who enjoys tormenting and destroying entire worlds and timelines for his amusement. His powers include vast reality manipulation, time travel, teleportation, and the ability to wrap the fabric of reality itself, making him a nearly omnipotent entity in the stories in which he appears. And throughout his arc, the Marquis of Death takes on the Fantastic Four, among other heroes, presenting a unique and almost insurmountable challenge. His mastery over time and space allows him to manipulate events from the past and future, often catching his enemies in traps from which there seems no escape. And his cruelty and penchant for destruction make him a dreaded figure across the realities he visits. And one notable aspect of his character is his relationship with his apprentice, Doctor Doom, whom he eventually betrays, leading to a climatic showdown. And this betrayal highlights the Marquis' view of reality as his plaything, including the lives of those who serve him, underscoring his role as a nihilistic force in the Marvel universe. And despite his relatively few appearances, he remains a memorable and terrifying figure in Marvel Comics, representing one of the ultimate expressions of villainy and destructive capability. And he was ultimately killed by Doctor Doom, so not all overpowered characters are immortal. Dreadpool. This version of Wade Wilson was introduced in Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe back in 2012. In this universe, Earth 12101, Wade undergoes the usual horrors: cancer, the Weapon X experiment, and constant psychological torment. But everything changes when he's captured by Psycho Man, who attempts to brainwash him into becoming a more obedient assassin by tampering with his mind and suppressing his inner voices. And instead of breaking him down, this accidentally awakens a new level of self-awareness and clarity in Deadpool. For the first time, Wade sees through everything: the lies, the cliches, and the endless suffering of being a comic book character. And that realization drives him insane. He no longer sees the Marvel Universe as a world of heroes and villains, but as a cruel, repetitive machine, one that forces people like him to suffer for the entertainment of an unseen audience. And this is when Wade Wilson becomes Dreadpool. He goes on a systematic massacre of the entire Marvel Universe, and not even cosmic beings are safe. He kills the Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, Hulk, Thor, The Watcher, and he doesn't stop there. He breaks into other realities, slaughters alternate versions of heroes, and eventually turns his sights on the writers and readers of the comic itself. Dreadpool becomes a meta-level threat, believing that the only way to find peace is to erase all of fiction. He still jokes, still smirks, but now those quips come with a dead stare and a blade to the throat. Where Wade Wilson clings to humor and chaos to survive his trauma, Dreadpool embraces the darkness. And in later stories like Deadpool Kills Deadpool, Dreadpool becomes the leader of a deadly army of evil Deadpools from across the multiverse, all bent on annihilation. And it takes the combined effort of heroic Deadpool variants to finally stop him. Barely. The Void. It's the dark alter ego of Robert Reynolds, better known as the Sentry, one of Marvel's most powerful and tragic characters. The Sentry is a radiant force of good with the power of a million exploding suns, and the Void is his mirror image, a monstrous malevolent entity born from fear, trauma, and mental instability. The Void doesn't come from an external source, it lives inside the Sentry. It is him. So Robert Reynolds gained his powers through an experimental super soldier serum, but what should have made him a savior also fractured his mind. The Void emerged as a manifestation of everything Robert suppressed: his guilt, self-hatred, fear, and trauma, given horrific, tangible form. And the darker Sentry's thoughts become, the stronger the Void gets, and the Sentry cannot exist without the Void, and vice versa. Visually, the Void is often depicted as a shifting, inky black mass with tendrils and glowing eyes. It's capable of shape-shifting, telepathy, fear manipulation, and mass destruction. And in the Siege storyline, the Void fully takes over and kills Ares, nearly defeats Thor, and comes closer to tearing the world apart. The Void speaks to Robert, whispers in his mind, mocks his heroism, and constantly tempts him to lose control. And the more Robert tries to be good, the more the Void waits to twist that goodness into devastation. Some stories even hint that the Void could be connected to larger cosmic forces like Null, tying it into the very fabric of Marvel's universe-spanning darkness. In short, the Void isn't just the Sentry's enemy, it's the version of himself he fears the most. And as long as the Sentry lives, the Void will always be there, lurking just beneath the surface. Iron Man 2020. Real name Arno Stark, is one of the most morally complex and authoritarian versions of Iron Man in Marvel's multiverse. Arno Stark was originally portrayed as a future descendant of Tony Stark, but in modern continuity, especially in the Iron Man 2020 event, he's reimagined as Tony's long-lost brother, born a genius, raised in secret, and ultimately corrupted by a dangerous blend of paranoia, entitlement, and utopian obsession. Arno was genetically engineered by Howard and Maria Stark to be the perfect son, meant to inherit the Stark legacy. However, he was born with a terminal illness that confined him to life support. For years, Tony never knew of his existence, and when they eventually met, Arno was brilliant, charming, and convinced he could reshape the world better than Tony ever had. And after Tony's apparent death, or digital reconstruction depending on the arc, Arno assumes the mantle of Iron Man, not as a hero, but as a techno-messianic authoritarian. With glowing gear-shaped pauldrons and a more aggressive, industrial Iron Man suit, he launches an initiative to impose peace by controlling AI through the Extinction Entity protocols, convinced that an incoming threat from a machine-based cosmic force must be preemptively neutralized. He becomes the face of robot oppression, suppressing AI rights and attempting to force all synthetic life under human control. In Iron Man 2020, Arno clashes with an entire rebellion of sentient robots and AI beings, led by Machine Man X-51 and eventually Tony himself, who returns in a new digital form. Arno believes he's saving the world, but in truth, he's being driven by delusion. His visions of the Extinction Entity turn out to be hallucinations created by his deteriorating condition. His crusade for control was never about protection, it was about fear. Arno Stark as Iron Man 2020 represents the dark side of futurism, a belief that progress requires domination, the fear of obsolescence, that he must outdo Tony or be forgotten, and the illusion of control. that the world can be fixed with enough tech and force. He's not a villain, he's more of a tragic mirror to Tony Stark. Where Tony's arc has always been about overcoming his flaws, Arno never gets the chance. He tries to build a perfect world and loses himself to the machinery he thought he could master. Astro Regulator Thanos. If King Thanos is the embodiment of victory without purpose, this version of Thanos is the apex of omnipotence, a version who rewrites all of existence. Introduced in Thanos the Infinity Conflict and the Infinity Ending, this version of the Mad Titan wields the power of a forgotten, cosmic device called the Astro Regulator. In this storyline, Thanos transcends even the powers of the Living Tribunal, the Infinity Stones, and the One Above All's cosmic balance, all in pursuit of one insane goal: absolute control of all realities, timelines, and possibilities. He achieves this by discovering and taking control of the Astro Regulator, a device once used by the One Above All to maintain equilibrium across the multiverse, and with it, Thanos becomes the supreme editor of reality itself. Once in possession of the device, Thanos absorbs the Living Tribunal, erases multiversal abstracts like eternity and infinity, destroys entire universes as casually as blinking, rewrites the laws of logic and physics to fit his will, and becomes omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent across the multiverse. And he did all of that with a terrifying calmness, believing he's making the universe better. And like a cosmic editor cleaning up a messy book, he trims anything he finds unnecessary, even if it means wiping out entire civilizations or abstract embodiments of concepts. But here's the twist: he loses. Why? Because he makes the same mistake he always does. He underestimates himself, or rather a version of himself. In the final moments of the Infinity Ending, a part of Thanos' soul, dubbed the Good Thanos, the one that regrets doubts and fears, manages to separate itself and reject the device's influence. With help from Adam Warlock, this fragment essentially undoes everything Astro Regulator Thanos created, using the device to reset reality back to its original state. And the price? The eraser of the godlike Thanos. So despite having ultimate power, Astro Regulator Thanos is brought down not by a bigger force, but by his own inner conflict. And based on that, we can safely say that this version of Thanos is one of the most powerful beings in all of Marvel lore. More powerful than the Infinity Gauntlet, more powerful than King Thanos, and arguably above nearly every cosmic entity. Maestro. As you can tell, he is the oldest version of Howard the Duck. Just kidding, just kidding. It's the old Hulk. He is jaded and lost all the reasons he ever tried to be good. In the dystopian future of Future Imperfect, nuclear war wipes out most of Earth's heroes and villains. Bruce Banner survives, of course, thanks to his gamma-powered durability, but the trauma, radiation, and isolation wrap him, and over time, he transforms into a cold tyrant who calls himself the Maestro. Maestro is a dictator with Banner's intellect and the Hulk's strength, ruling over the ruins of humanity like a god king. For years, Banner feared what would happen if he lost control. But don't get it wrong, Maestro isn't out of control. He is in total control, in total command. That makes him even scarier. He believes that the world needs his strength, his power, and his rule, especially now that everyone else failed. There's no remorse, no sadness, just the belief that might make right. And honestly, that logic kind of checks out. Physically, Maestro is even more imposing than the regular Hulk. The constant exposure to radiation has made him stronger, bulkier, and more durable than ever. He's got a full beard, graying hair, and wears the trophies of fallen heroes, literally. In his throne room, you can find Captain America's shield, Thor's hammer, and Iron Man's helmet. It's like a graveyard of the Marvel Universe. And he sits comfortably among the corpses of legends he likely helped bury. It's a flex, but a brutal one. He's not some random evil version of Hulk from another universe, he's our Hulk, just further down the line. That's what gives the story emotional weight. When the younger Hulk gets pulled into the future and meets Maestro, it's basically Bruce facing his own future self and realizing just how far he could fall. And it's not an easy one either. Taking Maestro down requires cleverness, desperation, and a lot of pain. Over the years, Maestros appeared in more stories and timelines, and in short, he is the Hulk with a crown. But the only thing heavier than that crown is the path he took to wear it. Tombstone. He is a chilling blend of mob enforcer, hitman, and crime boss, with a terrifying physical presence and a brutal reputation earned the hard way on the blood-soaked streets of New York. Tombstone is all about control of the streets, the rackets, and the respect that comes from raw, undeniable fear. Born with albinism, he grew up facing bullying and isolation in Harlem. But rather than fold under the weight of discrimination, he turned to violence, fighting back with relentless fury and craving out a place for himself in the criminal underworld. His early days as a teenage thug quickly escalated into full-blown enforcer status, as his natural size, ferocity, and lack of mercy made him a terrifying presence in the world of organized crime. Over time, he underwent experimental treatments that hardened his skin to near impenetrable levels and boosted his strength, turning him into a walking tank. But Tombstone isn't just muscle. He's also a cunning strategist, running rackets, controlling territory, and keeping an iron grip over his criminal empire. And his rivalry with Spider-Man and Daredevil is well documented, but perhaps his most personal battles are with Robbie Robertson, the longtime editor of the Daily Bugle. Robbie grew up alongside Lonnie and tried to steer him away from crime in their youth, but Tombstone saw kindness as weakness and their paths diverged violently. Over the years, he has repeatedly targeted Robbie and his family, turning their shared history into a twisted vendetta. Tombstone has clashed with many heroes. He clashed against Spider-Man, Daredevil, and he's even faced off with the Punisher. He doesn't weave elaborate deceptions or play long cons. He rules through fear, respect, and the knowledge that crossing him is a death sentence. He understands power at its most primal level. If you can't outtalk him, outrun him, or outfight him, you either serve him or you're crushed beneath him. And what makes him enduring as a villain is that he is street-level crime personified. He doesn't need alien tech, cosmic powers, or grand schemes. He's the brutal reality of life in the Marvel Universe's criminal underbelly. A man who took the hate and fear thrown at him as a child and turned it into a weapon to rule the streets. Not every villain needs to control the world. Some just need to control the block. And in his domain, he is the undisputed king of fear. The Hood. He is a villain who went from small-time crook to criminal kingpin by making a literal deal with the devilish forces of the supernatural. He made his debut in The Hood 1 in 2002. At the start, Parker Robbins is just an average petty thief from New York, struggling to support his family while skimming through low-level crimes. But everything changes when during a botched robbery, he stumbles across a mystical cloak and boots once belonging to a demonic entity. These artifacts give him the ability to turn invisible, levitate, and summon demonic firepower. He didn't set out to become a supervillain overlord. He was a man backed into a corner, desperate to make something of himself. But once he got a taste of power, he rapidly grew from a nobody to the head of a sprawling criminal empire, uniting dozens of minor supervillains under his leadership. He offered them what they craved: protection, purpose, and a chance to thrive under the radar of the Avengers and S.H.I.E.L.D. As the Hood, he has clashed with Spider-Man, Daredevil, the Punisher, and even the Avengers themselves. During the Dark Knight storyline, he becomes a key figure in the power vacuum left after Norman Osborn's rise to power, essentially becoming the king of the underworld. Unlike street thugs who operate in small territories, the Hood thinks bigger, using magic-enhanced intimidation and brutal enforcement to extend his reach across New York and beyond. As of his power, he has invisibility and teleportation, energy blasts, mystical tracking, making it almost impossible for enemies to hide from him, and later he even binds himself to Dormammu, Lord of the Dark Dimension, vastly increasing his power. But beyond the weapons and magic, the Hood's greatest asset is his ruthless ambition. He understands how to manipulate loyalty and fear, positioning himself as a boss who looks out for his crew while still keeping them in line through terror. He's cunning enough to play both sides, acting as a street-level enforcer while making moves in the mystical realms, always climbing higher on the ladder of power. Parker Robbins is a man who knows exactly what it feels like to have nothing, and he refuses to go back to that life. Every move he makes is to secure his power, protect his family, and stay ahead of the predators circling him. But in doing so, he's become a predator himself, a criminal who wears the mask of a demon to hide the desperation that made him. Red Skull. Again with the universe of Old Man Logan, it's Earth 807128 by the way. In this universe, Red Skull is the ultimate symbol of how far the world has fallen. After the villains banded together and wiped out nearly all the heroes, Red Skull came out on top. He made himself President of America. And in the most chilling, arrogant move imaginable, he wears Captain America's tattered costume and shield like a trophy, as if to say, I won. It's the ultimate middle finger to everything the heroes once stood for. This version of Red Skull isn't really about Hydra or Nazi ideology anymore. He's just pure power and ego. He sits in the White House, well, his twisted version of it, surrounded by relics of fallen heroes like a collector of corpses. You can see Iron Man's armor and various weapons just lying around like souvenirs from his war of domination. And he doesn't rule with fear so much as with apathy. The world's already broken, and he's content to just own it. He doesn't actually show up until later in Logan's journey. Logan is on a mission to get back home and pay off the whole gang to protect his family, and when he crosses paths with Red Skull, Skull mocks him, reminds him of the X-Men tragedy, and acts like Logan's nothing more than a relic. But of course, that's his mistake. The fight between them is quick, brutal, and incredibly satisfying. No grand speeches or drawn-out banter. Logan takes Cap's shield and decapitates him with it, just like that, using the symbol of truth and freedom to end the man who tried to twist it. And then, in classic Logan fashion, he seals Iron Man's old armor and flies off to finish his mission. So Red Skull in Old Man Logan is basically the endgame, and seeing Logan broken and bitter finally take him down, it's one of the most cathartic and satisfying moments in the entire Wasteland saga. God Emperor Doom. It's the ultimate version of Victor Von Doom, and in this form, he's not just a genius or a tyrant, he is a literal god. This version of Doom comes from the Secret Wars 2015 event, and it's one of the most powerful and terrifying iterations of any Marvel character ever. The story begins with the collapse of the multiverse. All realities are dying due to incursions, catastrophic events where universes crash into one another. As the multiverse falls apart, Doom works alongside Molecule Man and Doctor Strange to try and stop the destruction. But when the final incursion occurs between Earth 616 and the Ultimate Universe, Doom steals the power of the Beyonders, cosmic beings capable of destroying universes with ease. Armed with that stolen power, Doom creates a patchwork planet called Battleworld, made from the fragments of the destroyed multiverse. He kills the Beyonders, reshapes reality, and declares himself God Emperor Doom. On this new world, Doom rules with absolute authority. People worship him as a deity, and even cosmic beings like Galactus and the Living Tribunal are either destroyed or reshaped to serve him. Doctor Strange becomes his sheriff, and Sue Storm becomes his queen, despite her not knowing that Doom reshaped her memories. He rules all, yet he's constantly haunted by the fear that he's still not worthy of that power. And Reed Richards, his lifelong rival, still lives, hidden in the remnants of Earth 616, and Doom knows that, deep down, Reed might have been the better man to wield godhood. So when Reed eventually returns and confronts him, Doom admits the one truth that has always haunted him. Reed would have done it better, and that one moment of vulnerability is enough for Molecule Man to strip Doom of his power and give it to Reed, who remakes the multiverse anew. But Doom doesn't die. Instead, he survives, scarred emotionally more than physically. And for the first time in his life, he tries to be good. He even abandons the mask and becomes infamous Iron Man, attempting to honor the legacy of Tony Stark after his death. The One Below All. He is introduced as the ultimate embodiment of evil and destruction, contrasting with the One Above All, who represents the pinnacle of creation and benevolence. The One Below All was first revealed in the Immortal Hulk series, which began in 2018. Like I mentioned, this entity is portrayed as the dark counterpart and inverse of the One Above All, existing as the source of all malice, hatred, and decay in the universe. The One Below All inhabits the lowest depths of the Marvel multiverse, residing in a realm known as the Below Place, which is the very bottom of hell itself, where it is imprisoned. His power is immense and terrifying, primarily manifesting through its ability to corrupt, destroy, and bring about chaos. It can influence and possess individuals, turning them into agents of its will, often leading to catastrophic consequences. Its powers are inherently linked to gamma radiation in the Marvel Universe, with the One Below All being able to manipulate and enhance the destructive aspects of gamma, as seen through its interactions with the Hulk and other gamma-related characters. And throughout the Immortal Hulk series, the One Below All is portrayed as a constant existential threat, its influence slowly seeping into the world and bringing about the events of apocalyptic proportions. And it is depicted as the force behind Hulk's most uncontrollable and destructive transformations. So his thematic role in Marvel Comics is to serve as a narrative counterbalance to the more traditionally heroic and constructive forces. It embodies the concept that with every creation, there must also be destruction, posing philosophical questions about the nature of good and evil and the balance of power within the universe. And his introduction adds a profound layer of depth to the cosmology of the Marvel Universe, providing a dark mirror to the often more optimistic portrayal of cosmic entities in superhero comics. Amatsu Mikabushi, the Chaos King. He's a malevolent deity in Marvel Comics, drawn from Japanese mythology, where he is known as the Shinto god of evil, chaos, and the stars. First appearing in Thor Blood Oath 6 in 2006, Mikabushi is depicted as a primordial force of darkness and chaos, antagonistic to both the earthly realm and the celestial pantheon. His role extends beyond traditional mythology, positioning him as a cosmic entity with powers rivaling those of major gods and entities like Odin and Zeus. He is often portrayed as a nihilistic force seeking to return the universe to a state of non-existence and darkness, from which he originally emerged. His powers include immense strength, immortality, the ability to manipulate darkness and shadows, and control over lesser demons and evil spirits. Mikabushi can also wrap reality, change his form, and command vast armies of the dead and demonic creatures. One of his most significant story arcs is in Chaos War, where he wages an all-out war against the gods of Earth and various other pantheons. After defeating and enslaving numerous gods, he nearly succeeds in unmaking the universe. His actions during this storyline elevate him from a mere deity of evil to a cosmic destroyer, threatening the very fabric of reality. And this makes him one of the darker and more terrifying villains in Marvel, embodying the antithesis of creation and order. Overall, Amatsu represents the perpetual conflict between order and chaos, serving as a dark mirror to creative forces within the Marvel universe. His narrative explores themes of nihilism, destruction, and the eternal struggle against dark forces that seek to undo the cosmos. Magneto. He is easily one of Marvel's most iconic and complex villains, but more than anything, he is one of the most tragic figures in comic book history. He first appeared in X-Men 1 in 1963 as the primary antagonist of the X-Men. At first glance, Magneto might seem like just another power-hungry supervillain, bent on domination. But when you understand his past, you realize that Magneto is less a villain and more a man broken by the cruelty of the world, doing what he believes is necessary to protect his people, no matter the cost. Magneto's real name is Mac Eisenhart, though he is more commonly known by his alias, Eric Lanzire. His tragic story begins during World War II, when as a child he witnessed the absolute worst of humanity. Magneto is a Holocaust survivor, having been imprisoned in Auschwitz concentration camp, where he saw his family murdered and was forced to live through unimaginable horrors. These experiences shaped his worldview permanently. He learned that people will always fear and try to destroy what they don't understand. And from that moment on, Magneto vowed that he would never be powerless again. When his mutant powers of magnetism manifested, Magneto finally had the strength to fight back. But instead of using his abilities for peace, he decided that the only way to protect mutants from suffering the same fate as his family was through dominance. Magneto believes that humans will never accept mutants, and that the only way to ensure mutant survival is to conquer or eliminate anyone who stands in their way. His philosophy is built entirely on the trauma of his past. He is fighting a war he already lived through once, and he refuses to let it happen again. And what makes Magneto so tragic is that his goal isn't evil, it's protection. He fights for mutant kind, just as Professor X does. But while Xavier believes in peaceful coexistence between mutants and the humans, Magneto has lost all faith in that dream. He doesn't believe peace is possible because history has taught him otherwise. In his eyes, every time mutants try to live peacefully, they're hunted, oppressed, and killed. To Magneto, his actions are justified, no matter how extreme, because he sees himself as the only one willing to do what's necessary, making him nearly impossible to reason with. When Magneto acts, it's not out of selfishness, it's because he genuinely believes the future of his people depends on it. But perhaps the most heartbreaking part of Magneto's story is his relationship with Charles Xavier. They are old friends, once united by the same dream of helping mutants, and their philosophical divide has made them enemies. Yet their bond remains deeply respectful and mournful. They both want the same thing, but they just can't agree on how to get there. Magneto is the reminder that sometimes villains aren't born, they're created by tragedy. He is not evil for the sake of evil, like most one-dimensional villains. He's a man who has seen the absolute worst of humanity and vowed to never let it happen again. Malice. She's a corrupted, sadistic alter ego of Sue Storm, aka Invisible Woman. She is Sue Storm herself, twisted by dark emotions and external manipulation. Malice was first introduced in Fantastic Four 28 in 1985, when Psycho Man, a villain specializing in emotion control, used his technology to bring out Sue's deepest buried anger and resentment. Sue, normally the heart and soul of the Fantastic Four, was overwhelmed by a feeling of repressed frustration, rage, and dominance, leading her to shed her identity as the Invisible Woman and become Malice. As Malice, Sue underwent a dramatic personality shift. She discarded her nurturing and protective nature, replacing it with cruelty, arrogance, and a thirst for control. She no longer fought for her family, she fought for herself, reveling in her power and the ability to manipulate and dominate those around her. And what made Malice especially terrifying was how she used her invisibility and force fields in much deadlier ways than Sue ever had before. Normally, Sue's force fields are used for protection, but as Malice, she weaponized them. She could suffocate opponents, crush them from the inside, or slice them apart with razor-sharp constructs. Reed Richards and the Fantastic Four eventually managed to break Psycho Man's control over Sue, allowing her to reclaim her identity as the Invisible Woman. And Malice has resurfaced multiple times over the years, sometimes as a persona that Sue struggles to suppress, and sometimes as a fully independent entity, returning through supernatural or psychic means. So Sue realized that Malice was not just a product of mind control. Those emotions, that anger, had always been inside her, buried beneath her role as the team's peacekeeper. She had always been the most emotionally stable member of the Fantastic Four, but Malice proved that even she had limits. Onslaught. He is one of the most powerful and terrifying entities in the Marvel Universe. Introduced in X-Men 53 in 1996, he represents the nightmare scenario where Xavier's unparalleled psychic powers merges with Magneto's radical ideology, forming a nearly unstoppable force capable of reshaping reality itself. For years, Xavier and Magneto stood on opposite sides of the mutant struggle. Xavier preached peaceful coexistence, while Magneto advocated for mutant superiority. But after a brutal battle, Charles mind-wiped Magneto, erasing his consciousness to prevent further destruction. But what he didn't realize was that in doing so, he absorbed the darkest, most vengeful parts of Magneto's mind, creating a subconscious entity that would fester within him for years. This hidden darkness grew until it took physical form, transforming into Onslaught, an entity that possessed Xavier's full telepathic and telekinetic abilities, combined with Magneto's rage, hatred, and mastery of magnetism. However, Onslaught did not stop there. He soon absorbed both Franklin Richards and X-Men, an ultra-powerful version of Cable from an alternate universe, making him a godlike being capable of altering existence itself. He believes that humans and mutants can never coexist, but instead of fighting for mutant survival like Magneto, he decides that all of humanity must be annihilated, so mutants can rule uncontested. And his abilities are almost limitless. He has Omega-level telepathy, as he can control, manipulate, and erase minds on a planetary scale, Omega-level telekinesis, as he can lift and crush entire cities effortlessly, magnetic manipulation, reality wrapping, and energy projection, and invulnerability. He was so powerful that it took nearly every major Marvel hero, including the X-Men, the Avengers, and the Fantastic Four, to stop him. And in the climatic battle, they realized that the only way to destroy him was for all non-mutants heroes to sacrifice themselves, absorbing his energy and dispersing it. And this led to the Heroes Reborn event, where the Avengers and Fantastic Four were temporarily wiped from existence before being reborn in an alternate reality. And even after his defeat, Onslaught has returned in many different forms. Poison Thanos. He's one of the most chilling alternate versions of the Mad Titan, a version of him stripped of individuality, emotion, and even purpose, replaced by the cold hunger of the Poison Hive. In the Venomverse and Poison X storylines, the Poisons are parasitic alien creatures that prey on symbiote hosts, consuming both the alien and its bonded hero to create a single, fused predator. When this parasite infects Thanos, one of the most powerful beings in existence, it creates a cosmic infection with ambition. In this reality, Thanos is no longer a warlord seeking balance or love. Instead, he becomes the second in command of the Poison Hive, serving under the mysterious Poison Queen, who he believes to be his beloved mistress Death. This rapt belief drives his loyalty, transforming his devotion into blind servitude. The idea that Thanos, the self-proclaimed conqueror of destiny, would kneel to anyone shows how deeply the poisons corrupt both the body and the soul. His towering, purple frame turns ghostly white, his armor jagged and alien, his face split by glowing scars of infection. He is still intelligent and ruthless, but his motives are gone. All that remains is the Hive's instinct to consume. When he learns that Earth's kid Kaiju can summon monsters from imagination, he leads the first invasion into the Prime Marvel universe to assimilate its inhabitants. The attack fails, but Thanos and the Hive adapt. Their next move is to use the symbiotes of Glintar as a bridge. By letting the symbiotes bond with Earth's heroes first, the poisons can merge with them more easily afterward. Poison Thanos watches this plan unfold from the shadows, with Poison Doctor Doom as his right hand. Together they manipulate, infect, and prepare to consume beings like Carnage and even cosmic entities, turning icons of powers into walking extensions of their hive mind. So this version of Thanos still has the power, intellect, and cunning of the Titan, but none of the passion, none of the ego, none of the tragic complexity. He's a hollow god, moving only because the hive commands it. His attempt to capture Kid Kaiju ends with an epic confrontation against the boy's summoned monsters, who finally overwhelm and destroy him. When the Poison Queen was eventually destroyed by Jean Grey, the entire hive collapsed, and the Poison Thanos disintegrated with it. His death marked the end of a terrifying chapter, a universe where even the greatest conqueror in existence became nothing more than a puppet for a collective parasite. Chameleon. Among Marvel's street-level villains, Chameleon holds a special place as one of the most dangerous and slippery foes Spider-Man has ever faced. Long before there were shapeshifters with alien powers or holographic disguises, Chameleon was already perfecting the art of imposture and infiltration. He is the first supervillain Spider-Man ever fought, debuting all the way back in The Amazing Spider-Man 1 in 1963. He's a Russian-born master of disguise and espionage. He possesses no superhuman abilities himself, but his genius lies in mimicry and manipulation. With lifelike masks, prosthetics, and advanced voice mimicry, and eventually even surgically altered features and holographic technology, he can flawlessly impersonate anyone. He can slip into high-security areas, assume the identity of trusted allies, or destroy reputations by impersonating his enemies at their worst moments. But he is more than just a man in a mask. He is a psychological predator. His manipulation extends beyond appearances. He understands human behavior, mannerisms, speech patterns, and emotional triggers, allowing him to deceive even those closest to his targets. He studies his victims obsessively, learning their routines and relationships so he can weaponize trust against them. Chameleon sees Spider-Man as both a challenge and a symbol of the society that underestimates him. By impersonating Spider-Man or his loved ones, Chameleon has framed Peter Parker for his crimes, turning the public against him, infiltrated hero circles, posing as Avengers or S.H.I.E.L.D. agents to sow discord, and attacked Peter's emotional core, posing as trusted friends to get close enough to destroy his life from the inside out. Over the years, as he's impersonated more and more people, his own personality has fragmented. There are times when he no longer knows who he truly is, and this has pushed him deeper into madness, making his deceptions even more unpredictable and dangerous. And while Chameleon often operates solo, he has deep criminal connections. He's been aligned with the Kravinoff family, he's actually Kraven the Hunter's half-brother, and he has worked with Hydra, the Sinister Six, and other underground syndicates. Billy Russo, aka Jigsaw. Best known as one of the Punisher's most personal and relentless enemies, he's a street-level villain who doesn't rely on grand schemes or mystical powers. He fights with brutality, military skill, and a burning hatred that refuses to die. Billy Russo started as a hitman and enforcer for New York's crime families. In the underworld, he was known as Billy the Bow for his handsome looks and smooth charm. He was slick, ruthless, and effective, running assassinations and cleaning up problems for the highest bidder. But everything changed the day he crossed paths with Frank Castle, aka the Punisher. During one of Frank's early crusades against organized crime, Castle hunted Russo down and, in one of his most brutal acts, smashed Billy's face through a glass window pane, shattering his face into an unrecognizable mess of scars. The wounds were so severe that even reconstructive surgery couldn't restore his looks, and Billy's once handsome face became a jagged, gruesome patchwork of scar tissue, earning him the name Jigsaw. But Jigsaw isn't just a physical monster, he's mentally fractured too. His disfigurement pushed him over the edge, wrapping his already violent personality into something darker and more obsessive. He blames Frank Castle for destroying his life, and since that day, his entire existence has been defined by one thing: revenge. Jigsaw operates like a general of urban warfare. He's an expert marksman and tactician with military-level training in weapons and explosives. He commands gangs and criminal armies in the streets of New York, and he's a master of psychological warfare, using fear and personal attacks to torment the Punisher. And what makes Jigsaw especially dangerous is how personal his war against the Punisher is. He doesn't just want Frank dead, he wants him broken, destroyed mentally and emotionally. He targets Frank's allies, his safe houses, and anyone who gives him aid. He creates elaborate traps and scenarios designed to make Frank suffer, reflecting his own scarred psyche in the chaos he unleashes. And over the years, he has become more than just a Punisher villain. He's battled Spider-Man, Daredevil, and Moon Knight, always bringing his brand of street-level carnage wherever he goes. In some stories, like the Punisher Warzone and Punisher Max, his obsession drives him to form alliances with other criminals, rising from a scarred enforcer to a full-fledged crime lord with a terrifying reputation. He fights not for power, not for money, but because hate is all he has left, and in the streets of New York, that makes him one of the most dangerous threats of all. Goblin Queen. Also known as Madeline Pryor, she is a woman born as a copy, manipulated into villainy, created from the genetic material of Jean Grey, and then becomes the Goblin Queen, a dark sorceress who unleashes hell literally on Earth. Madeline was introduced in Uncanny X-Men 168 back in 1983. At first, she seemed to be an ordinary human woman who fell in love with Scott Summers, aka Cyclops, shortly after Jean Grey's apparent death. They married and had a child, Nathan Summers, who would grow up to become Cable. But what neither of them knew was that Madeline wasn't just a lookalike. She was a clone of Jean, created by Mr. Sinister as part of a twisted plan to breed a powerful mutant heir. And when Jean Grey returned from the dead, Cyclops abandoned Madeline and their son, triggering her spiral into despair and rage. Feeling rejected, irrelevant, and robbed of her identity, Madeline became vulnerable to dark forces, specifically the demon Nastor, who offered her the power to take revenge on the world that had discarded her. She accepted, transforming into the Goblin Queen with vast magical abilities and a deep connection to Limbo, a hellish dimension ruled by demonic forces. As the Goblin Queen, Madeline launched the infamous Inferno event, in which she unleashed demonic hordes onto New York City, causing reality to wrap, buildings to come alive, and civilians to turn into monsters, sought to sacrifice her own son, believing it would give her ultimate power and allow her to sever her ties to Jean Grey permanently, and battled the X-Men and X-Factor. Though she ultimately died in Inferno, Madeline's story didn't end there. She was resurrected multiple times, often returning as a vengeful and unstable force, still wrestling with the fact that she was created, not born, and that her existence has always been defined by someone else's shadow. The Goblin Queen wields a combination of powerful sorcery, enhanced by demonic pacts, psionic abilities, inherited from her origin as Jean Grey clone, and manipulation and seduction, often turning others to her side, especially in the demon realm. Unlike many evil versions of heroes, she didn't choose the darkness right away. It found her, exploited her pain, and transformed her into something terrifying. In more recent stories like Hell Lions and Dark Web, Marvel has revisited Madeline with more nuance, presenting her not just as a villain, but as a broken, tragic anti-hero, still trying to find her place in a world that was never meant to include her. The Hulk from Old Man Logan. In the dystopian wasteland of Old Man Logan by Mark Millar and Steve McNiven, the Hulk is no longer a hero, or even a man. He's become a grotesque, tyrannical monster, twisted by isolation, radiation, and madness into a force of absolute terror. And this version of Bruce Banner is one of the most disturbing depictions of the Hulk ever created. So in this universe, decades after the villains banded together and wiped out Earth's superheroes in a coordinated massacre, the United States has been carved up into territories ruled by supervillain warlords. One of the most feared is the Hulk Gang, a brutal clan of gamma-powered, inbred monsters descended from Bruce Banner himself, and ruling over them from what used to be California is Hulk, a senile, savage, and cannibalistic patriarch now utterly corrupted. Unlike the classic Hulk, who struggles with morality and control, this Hulk embraced his darker impulses. He grew bitter in the post-hero world, resentful of humanity, and chose isolation and domination over redemption. With no heroes left to hold him accountable, Banner became a backwoods tyrant. Even worse, he fathered his entire gang with his cousin Jennifer Walters, aka She-Hulk, resulting in a clan of incestuous, redneck Hulks who terrorize anyone crossing their path. This Hulk is insanely strong, even by Hulk standards, strong enough to eat people whole and survive being ripped open. He's completely unhinged, having long since lost his moral compass and sanity, and he is driven by dominance, demanding tribute from the people in his territory and ruling through fear and brutality. And when Logan, now a pacifist farmer, fails to pay rent to the Hulk gang, they slaughter his wife and children, and this forces Logan to break his vow of non-violence and embark on a vengeful road trip across America. Eventually he confronts Hulk himself. After Logan kills most of the gang, Hulk eats him alive, but Logan survives, bursts out of Hulk's stomach in one of the most iconic and savage scenes in modern Marvel comics, and finally ends the monster's reign once and for all. This Hulk is not possessed, mind-controlled, or corrupted by some external force. He simply gave in. He let go of his humanity, gave up on the world, and became the very thing he once fought against. Lasher. First introduced as part of the Venom Little Protector miniseries in 1993. He was one of the 5 symbiotes derived from Venom and spawned by the Life Foundation that I talked about in part 1. He was bonded with Ramon Hernandez, a mercenary employed by the Life Foundation. Symbiote is characterized by its ability to use tendrils to whip, lash, and ensnare enemies, living up to its name. These tendrils can be used for a variety of purposes, from offensive attacks to enhancing mobility by grappling surrounding structures. Visually, Lasher is green, setting it apart from the typically darker hues of its symbiote relatives. Its appearance and abilities are designed to evoke a more aggressive, yet controlled demeanor, fitting the tactical role it was designed to fill within the Life Foundation's plans. His role in the comics has often been tied to the group dynamics of the Life Foundation's symbiotes, and not as prominently featured as some other symbiotes like Venom or Carnage. And Ramon was not as deeply explored as other hosts. But after breaking ties with the Life Foundation, Ramon tried to learn how to control Lasher so that he could become a superhero. Sadly, he was killed off by the paramilitary vigilante organization known as Jury during 1995's Venom Separation Anxiety miniseries. Lasher was present in Venom The Last Dance with a quick cameo. The symbiote bonded with Dr. Sari Christmas and helped her fight the Xenophages in the final battle. Phage is also one of the 5 symbiotes spawned from Venom by the Life Foundation. He bonded to Karl Mash, also a mercenary working for the Life Foundation, and he is characterized by its bright yellow and orange color scheme. And like Lasher, He was designed to be a part of a security team, and its abilities reflect a combat-oriented purpose. Its powers are typical of those found in symbiotes, including enhanced strength, agility, and the ability to generate web-like substances. However, Phage distinguishes itself through its ability to form bladed weapons from its limbs. These weapons can vary from large blades to spikes, and throughout its appearances in Marvel Comics, Phage has often been portrayed as part of the symbiote ensemble rather than a standalone character. Its storylines generally involve its interactions with its fellow Life Foundation symbiotes, as they collectively navigate their existence bound to human hosts and their roles as both weapons and sentient beings. And he also had a quick cameo in the third Venom movie where he bonded with a security guard named Jim. Abysses. He starts as Galen, the being who would become Galactus. Originally a scientist from a previous universe, Galen survives the end of everything and is reborn as Galactus, a cosmic entity forced to consume planets to survive. For billions of years, he's basically a force of nature, dangerous, but not truly evil. That changes completely in Earth 2099, when he meets something far darker. At some point in the future, Galactus encounters a massive symbiote entity tied to Null, the god of symbiotes. Null offers him more power, and Galactus, thinking like a cosmic being, accepts. Big mistake. Instead of gaining control, Galactus gets corrupted. The symbiote merges with him, twisting both his body and mind into Abysses. At this point, Galen is still inside, but he's basically a prisoner, forced to watch as Null takes over and turns him into something far monstrous than he ever was. Regular Galactus eats planets. Abysses, he consumes everything, not just worlds, but all life on them, including souls. His power is now a mix of the power cosmic and Null's necro energy, meaning he's erasing existence on a deeper level. He even recruits heralds, like a corrupted version of Dracula, turning them into servants. Wherever Abysses goes, entire systems collapse, physically and spiritually, and then he escalates things to a whole new level. When challenged by Mephisto, it turns into a massive cosmic showdown where both sides recruit champions. Abysses infects fighters with symbiotes, basically enslaving them to Null's will. At this point, he's not your typical villain. He's a walking apocalypse, a fusion of Galactus' hunger and Null's darkness. Abysses is easily one of the most terrifying versions of Galactus ever created. Iron Maniac, a version of Iron Man from Earth 5012 who has completely abandoned his heroism and embraced his darkest impulses. He lost everything and turned into a cold-blooded warlord, using his genius not to save the world, but to dominate and destroy. First introduced in Marvel Team Up 2 in 2005, Iron Maniac comes from a future timeline where Earth's greatest heroes were systematically wiped out by an alien invasion. In this timeline, Tony led the fight against the invaders alongside the Avengers, but despite their best efforts, nearly all of Earth's heroes, including Captain America, Spider-Man and the X-Men, were killed, and with no one left to stand beside him, Tony took it up upon himself to eradicate the alien threat. But in doing so, he became cold, merciless, and obsessed with victory at any cost. By the time the war ended, Iron Maniac was no longer a hero. He had become a dictator, believing that he alone knew what was best for humanity. And without the Avengers to keep him in check, his paranoia and god complex reached new heights. He saw anyone who opposed him as a threat, and used his vast technological resources to crush all resistance, turning his world into a dystopia under his absolute control. Physically, Iron Maniac's armor is even more advanced and dangerous than the standard Iron Man suits. It is bulkier, featuring a menacing skull-like faceplate, and his technology is lethal and built for total war, incorporating advanced weapons, energy shielding, and even nanotech enhancement that allow him to repair his suit mid-battle. Eventually, Iron Maniac found a way to travel across dimensions, landing in Earth 616, where he immediately began trying to conquer this reality as well. He viewed this universe's Avengers, Spider-Man, and other heroes as weak, believing that their morality and hesitation made them unfit to lead. He sought to reshape Earth 616 in the same image as his own ruined world, believing that only through absolute control could humanity survive future threats. Iron Maniac is still Tony Stark, just a version of him who no longer cares about ethics, teamwork, or human life. He still has the same level of intelligence, strategy, and technological mastery, but without any of the restraints that keeps the regular Iron Man from crossing the line into villainy. In many ways, he is superior Iron Man, taken to an even greater extreme. Not just selfish, but outright ruthless and willing to eliminate anyone who stands in his way. Superior Iron Man. He is one of the most dangerous and uncertain versions of Tony Stark. Introduced during the Axis event in Superior Iron Man 1 in 2014, this variant isn't from an alternate universe like the Maker. Instead, this is the same Tony Stark from the main Marvel universe, whose personality was radically altered when a magical spell inverted the moral alignments of several heroes and villains. For Tony, this meant the worst parts of himself. His arrogance, selfishness, and desire for control took over completely. After the inversion, Tony embraced his darker instincts and quickly abandoned any pretense of being a hero. He moved to San Francisco and launched what might be his most manipulative and dystopian creation yet, Extremis 3.0, an app that could perfect people's bodies, essentially granting them beauty, health, and even enhanced abilities. But there was a catch. While Tony initially gave Extremis away for free, he soon began charging a daily subscription fee, essentially holding people's ideal selves hostage unless they could keep paying. Overnight, he turned his genius into a weapon of greed, profiting from people's desperation to maintain their perfection. And this version of Iron Man wasn't just about making money, he was openly egotistical and unapologetic, fully believing that the world was better off under his control. He saw no problem with manipulating, exploiting, or even harming others if it served his vision of progress. The same mind that built the Iron Man armor and saved the world countless times was now devoted to keeping himself above everyone else, as he reveled in it. His armor reflected his shift in personality. His suit was made from liquid, reflective Indocem armor, which was pure silver white, sleek, and almost alien in appearance. It wasn't just stylish, this suit was one of his most advanced ever, capable of self-repair, adapting on the fly, and functioning like a living extension of Tony's body. It symbolized his complete mastery over technology, combined with his total disregard for anyone who couldn't keep up. And what makes Superior Iron Man so disturbing is how believable he is. Even in his normal state, Tony Stark has always flirted with arrogance, control, and questionable decisions, so Superior Iron Man is just Tony without the breaks, fully committed to the idea that he's smarter than everyone else and therefore deserves to rule. Though his reign came to an end when the inversion spell was reversed, the idea of that version of Tony has stuck with fans ever since, and it serves as a reminder of just how dangerous Stark can become if his worst traits go unchecked. In short, Superior Iron Man is Tony Stark at his most selfish, most brilliant, and most terrifying. He is proof that sometimes the greatest threat to the world isn't an alien invasion or a mad scientist, sometimes it's just a genius who no longer cares about doing the right thing. Dark Phoenix. She's not just one of Marvel's most iconic evil variants, she is one of the most dangerous and devastating forces in the entire Marvel universe. Dark Phoenix is the corrupted form of Jean Grey, a founding member of the X-Men, after she becomes fully consumed by the immense power of the Phoenix Force. Introduced during the legendary Dark Phoenix saga in 1980, this storyline forever changed the X-Men and established Dark Phoenix as the ultimate symbol of power without control. The Phoenix Force is a cosmic entity representing life, death, and rebirth. When Jean Grey sacrificed herself during a space mission to save her teammates, the Phoenix Force resurrected her, bonding with her and enhancing her powers beyond imagination. As Phoenix, Jean became one of the most powerful beings in existence, able to manipulate matter at an atomic level, resurrect the dead, and tap into limitless cosmic energy. For a time she used this power as a force for good, helping the X-Men protect the Earth. But such incredible power comes with a price. Jean's transformation into Dark Phoenix happened when her emotions spiraled out of control, and the Phoenix Force, feeding on her human desires, unleashed her most destructive instincts. Corrupted by lust for power, freedom, and experience, Jean became something far beyond human, a being driven by pure cosmic hunger. No longer content with saving the world, Dark Phoenix set her sights on dominating the universe, consuming a star and wiping out an entire populated solar system in the process. With that one act, she instantly became a threat not just to Earth, but to all of existence. What makes Dark Phoenix so terrifying is that she is still Jean Grey at her core. The heart and soul of one of the X-Men's most beloved members are buried within this unstoppable force of destruction. The X-Men, especially Cyclops, were forced to watch the woman they loved turn into a monster, knowing that stopping her might mean killing her. Dark Phoenix's powers are virtually limitless, but it's not just her strength that makes her dangerous. It's the lack of any human restraint. She doesn't think like a person anymore. She acts like a cosmic force, following her hunger and desire for experience, regardless of the consequences for the universe. But her story ends in tragedy. Realizing the danger she posed to everyone she cared about, Jean fought to regain control long enough to sacrifice herself, ending her own life to prevent Dark Phoenix from consuming the cosmos. And to this day, Dark Phoenix stands as one of Marvel's most powerful and heartbreaking evil variants. She's a symbol of what happens when the burden of limitless power becomes too much for even the strongest mind to bear. Bedlam. He first appeared in Venom 1 in 2021. He is one of Eddie Brock's temporal offshoots pulled out of time by Meridius. This iteration of Eddie has been mentally regressed to a British criminal form of the Little Protector, driven solely by a desire to kill Peter Parker. Bedlam is consumed with anger and at the pinnacle of physical strength, focused solely on defeating his enemies. And like the other King in Blacks, Bedlam has the ability to project his consciousness into any symbiote across any time and space, a power he actively utilizes to track down his targets, so he can induce fear, madness, and disorientation in others. His role is primarily antagonistic, involving conflicts with Venom and other characters who encounter its path. And although Bedlam does not have the extensive comic book presence of some other symbiotes, its unique attributes and the psychological horror it presents add a bit of depth to the symbiote lore. And that's what we like as pop culture fans, the expansion of the lore.
Hell Hulk. It's exactly what it sounds like. A Hulk created in Hell, on purpose, as an experiment. He was engineered in one of Hell's laboratories by Severus for Mephisto, not as a hero or even a weapon with a goal, but as a test of how far demonic power could be pushed. After his creation, the infant Hell Hulk was thrown into the infernal furnace, which rapidly aged him and transformed him into a massive, Hulk-like monster fueled by demonic energy. Almost immediately, he lost control and went into a berserk rage. So whatever Mephisto wanted to build, he didn't fully understand what he was unleashing. The first thing this Hulk did was turn on his own creator's boss. He attacked Mephisto himself, coming so close to killing the Hell Lord that Mephisto had to call in Bogragul to save his life. Bogragul tore Hell Hulk apart, cutting him into pieces, and even then, the monster didn't die. His body parts remained alive, forcing Mephisto to make a desperate decision: scatter the pieces across Earth so Hell Hulk could never be whole again. And that should have ended the threat, but obviously it didn't. Even dismembered, his body parts radiated demonic energy that drove anyone nearby into uncontrollable rage and violence. Entire areas collapsed into chaos just from being close to his severed limbs. Thousands of deaths followed as people lost control of themselves, turning on neighbors, strangers, anyone. This wasn't just destruction, it was emotional infection. Hell Hulk didn't need to swing fists anymore. His mere existence poisoned the world around him. Severus eventually returned, pretending to help protect the world through Project Hellfire, while secretly plotting revenge against Mephisto. He reassembled the Hell Hulk, fully restored his power, and betrayed everyone involved. Hell Hulk tore through the Pentagon, nearly killed the destroyers, and was then enslaved by Severus and driven through Washington, D.C., where his energy caused mass insanity and death. Thousands died simply because he passed through the city. Severus planned to use Hell Hulk to lure Mephisto to Earth, where demons are weaker, and kill him once and for all. The plan collapsed when Mephisto, the destroyers, and Aurora all converged in Hell's backbone, Utah. Hell Hulk once again attacked Mephisto with pure rage while Severus tried to control everything through magic. In the end, Mephisto seized his moment, overpowered the situation, and dragged Hell Hulk back into Hell, reclaiming his greatest mistake. This Hulk didn't fall as a villain with goals or ideology, he ended as a force of pure destruction, too dangerous for Earth, Hell, or anyone to truly control.
Winter Hulk. This version of Jennifer Walters comes from Jason Aaron's Avengers run. The story picks up after Jen had finally regained some peace and control over her She-Hulk persona, only for that to be ripped away when the Winter Guard, Russia's superhuman strike team, abducts her. They drag her into the infamous Red Room, the same facility that created Black Widow, except this time they don't train her, they break her, and what emerges is Winter Hulk, the most destructive incarnation of Jennifer Walters ever. While the Red Room's experiments enhance her strength far beyond her usual Hulk limits, they also twist her psychology. The process turns her skin into a burning, metallic crimson, and her gamma energy becomes volatile, manifesting as bursts of green fire that she can actually breathe. She goes from someone who smashes her enemies to someone who melts them. Once she escapes, her first mission is hunting down Gorilla Man, the Avengers traitor who helped the Winter Guard capture her. So she storms into a bar full of mercenaries and wipes them out without hesitation. What really adds to the horror is what the Red Room did behind the scenes. They sold her blood. The Russian government made a deal with Dracula, allowing the newly established vampire nation in Chernobyl to feed on She-Hulk's gamma-infused blood. The result was an even more unstable and monstrous transformation, with Jen Strange tied to vampiric rage and hunger. That connection made Winter Hulk unpredictable, almost feral. She became a living weapon designed to destroy anything that stood in Russia's way. She withstands oceanic pressure, fighting off off armies of Atlanteans, burns through steel with her fire breath, and destroys military-grade defenses like paper. She's meaner, more tactical, and fights with the kind of cold, surgical efficiency that only comes from being brainwashed and rebuilt by the Red Room. Even the Avengers, who once counted her as a close ally, realized they might not be able to stop her without destroying her in the process. But underneath all that rage and destruction, there's still a trace of Jennifer Walters. You can feel that struggle in her quieter moments. The problem is, every time she tries to claw her way back to sanity, the monster pushes harder. So basically, she is the She-Hulk stripped of humor, empathy, and restraint. It's one of the most disturbing, yet fascinating evolutions of the character. Claw. While the Hulk is already the embodiment of anger, this is what happens when even that rage gets its own monster. He is often called the Hulk's Hulk. Unlike the Hulk, who deep down still fights for good, this version is pure sadistic destruction given form. His appearance alone sets him apart. Pitch black skin, glowing red cracks all over his body, like molten scars, jagged with white hair, burning red eyes, and sharp claws instead of hands. If the Hulk is anger unleashed, this version is hate personified. He was created during the Access storyline when a massive magical inversion spell swapped the moralities of heroes and villains. The spell reached deep into Bruce Banner's psyche, awakening the one being even the Hulk himself tried to repress. He clawed his way back to the surface, laughing as he did, mocking both Banner and the Hulk for their weakness. Unlike the other Hulk personas like the Devil Hulk or Guilt Hulk, who at least had some purpose or twisted logic, this version had none. He existed purely to kill. The moment he appeared, he single-handedly tore through the inverted Avengers, shrugging off their attacks like nothing. He didn't fight for control or survival, he fought because he loved the chaos. What made him frightening wasn't just his range, though he was strong enough to toss around heroes like toys, it was how much he enjoyed suffering. He taunted his enemies while crushing them, laughing as he talked about bathing in the blood of the innocent. At one point he even tried to eat Nova's arm, completely unfazed that Nova was still a teenager. Cannibalistic, psychotic, and utterly unhinged, he was the kind of monster that made even other monsters nervous. Even the inverted villains wanted nothing to do with him, recognizing that Claw wasn't just another rampaging brute. Power-wise, he retained all of Hulk's usual abilities, superhuman strength, near immortality, regeneration, and resilience, but his claws made him even deadlier. They weren't just for show. He could slice through steel or bone with terrifying precision, his healing factor made him unstoppable, and his mind was too far gone for reason or empathy. Eventually, it took the combined effort of some of the most powerful beings alive to stop him, including the White Skull, an inverted Red Skull, Doctor Doom, Scarlet Witch, Brother Voodoo, and Captain America. Only after an immense magical reversal was Claw finally exercised, and Bruce Banner returned to normal. Daredevil. Matt Murdock is one of those heroes who never really had a calm or stable life. Matt Murdock deals with trauma, guilt, Catholic pressure, and emotional conflict more than almost any other Marvel hero. So when he breaks, it feels very grounded and very real. There were several points in Daredevil's stories where the line between hero and villain started to blur for him, especially when his mental state was pushed past its limit. A big turning point was the Shadowland event. After years of pain, loss, and non-stop battles with crime in Hell's Kitchen, Matt reached a point where he felt like the justice system simply didn't work anymore. So when he became the leader of the Hand, he tried to reform them into a force for good. But this decision slowly corrupted him. The Hand doesn't do morality or half measures. Leading them means you start crossing lines automatically, even if you believe you are doing it for a good reason. The corruption got worse because Matt was influenced by dark magic and the Hand's rituals. His anger and trauma made him vulnerable to it. He started punishing criminals in more brutal ways, executing people instead of delivering them to justice, and running Hell's Kitchen like a dictator. He honestly believed he was creating order and protecting people more effectively than the law ever could. But this was the moment where Daredevil was no longer acting like a hero. He was becoming exactly the kind of threat he used to fight against. The Avengers and other street heroes eventually had to step in because what Daredevil was doing was changing the entire balance of street-level power. Matt fought his own friends, his allies, and other heroes who once respected him. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a true fall into darkness. His friends weren't trying to stop a criminal. They were trying to save one of their own. But Matt was too far gone in that moment to even realize he needed help. Everything ended with Daredevil losing control completely, and eventually he was defeated. After the Shadowland incident, he had to step away from everything and rebuild his identity. The story wasn't written so Daredevil becomes a permanent villain forever, but it absolutely proved he can become one, and that under the wrong mental and emotional pressure, Matt Murdock can be one of the most dangerous people in Marvel. And what makes Matt's villain phase interesting is that it wasn't fueled by ego or cosmic power. It came from pressure, trauma, exhaustion, and the belief that the world needed someone stronger than the law. And that makes it very human. He wasn't trying to destroy people. He thought this was the best way to protect them. Muse. Introduced in Daredevil 2015 issue 15, He isn't your typical crime lord or hired gun. He isn't after power, money, or even revenge. What he craves is chaos and creation through bloodshed. He's an artist, and his medium is violence. Muse operates with the twisted mind of a serial killer who believes he's a misunderstood visionary. He views the world as his canvas and the people within it as materials for his art. And his murders are elaborate performances meant to provoke fear and admiration. From murals painted in human blood to grotesque displays made from the bodies of his victims, Muse kills for expression. He romanticizes his crimes, and he sees himself as an artist pushing boundaries. And he even engages with the media and public, forcing the city to witness his exhibits and ponder their meaning. He believes the heroes who try to stop him are part of the show, characters in the narrative he's crafting with every violent stroke of his brush. He's an expert at stealth and evasion, able to slip through the shadows of New York City with ease. He's highly intelligent, planning his killings like theatrical masterpieces, always several steps ahead of his pursuers, and he's a deadly combatant, capable of holding his own against street-level heroes, using blades, traps, and psychological warfare. Muse first crossed paths with Daredevil during his time as a deputy district attorney in New York, when Muse began targeting Inhumans, using them in his horrific masterpieces. And this elevated his crimes from murder to hate-fueled performance art, as he sought to send twisted messages about power and society. And Daredevil, alongside Blindspot, relentlessly haunted Muse, but stopping him wasn't just about brute force. It was about understanding the madness behind his method. He's fascinated by fear, by the creation his art provokes, and by the permanence of his horrifying creations. He doesn't fear death or capture because in his mind, he's already immortalized himself through his grotesque masterpieces. Muse represents a unique kind of street-level threat. He is less of a gangster and more of a terror artist, turning every murder into a statement and every crime scene into a gallery.
Poison. His story begins much like the Earth 616 Peter's The Other storyline, where he is cocooned under the Brooklyn Bridge and offered rebirth by the embodiment of his spider powers. But instead of accepting that new life, this Peter rejects his inner spider and kills it, tearing off its head. In doing so, he severs his connection to the life force that could have renewed him, leaving his body incomplete, half-dead, a hollow vessel waiting to be filled. The opening is exactly what the Venom symbiote feels. It abandons its host, McGargan, and slithers back to Peter's cocoon, merging with him while he's still trapped between life and death. For months, Peter's fading consciousness battles the alien in his mind, but the struggle drags on until the symbiote finally wins. The human part of Peter Parker dies, and something new takes his place. The creature that emerges isn't Spider-Man or Venom, it's something worse, something entirely alien. It calls itself Poison because, unlike Venom, it doesn't just bond, it consumes. His first act is to visit Aunt May and Mary Jane, assuring them in a disturbingly calm voice that everything will be okay. He believes he's been reborn through love, that his new power is a gift he should share, but his version of love is wrapped and parasitic. He offers to bond Mary Jane to a symbiote spawn so they can be together forever. When she recoils and calls him Venom, he corrects her coldly, saying Venom was weak, that he is evolution. When Wolverine and Luke Cage intervene, he defeats them effortlessly, even stabbing Cage with a toxin-filled stinger that bypasses his invulnerable skin. Poison isn't raging like a monster. He is eerily composed, speaking like a preacher while performing acts of horror. Mary Jane manages to manipulate his fractured mind, buying time by pretending to agree to bond with his symbiote offspring. For a brief moment, Peter's old self flickers inside, and Poison hesitates, but his humanity is long gone. After leaving her alive, he digs up Gwen Stacy's corpse and resurrects her with a symbiote of her own, turning her into a carnage-like creature. So Poison isn't just another evil variant, he is what happens when Peter's compassion and guilt rush into obsession and control. It's a perfect inversion of the Spider-Man mythos. The hero who once swore to protect others becomes the disease that devours them. The Necromancer. A twisted version of Doctor Strange, a version of him who abandoned the path of enlightenment and fully embraced the temptations of death and power. Hailing from Counter-Earth, this Strange began his story much like the one we know, a brilliant but arrogant surgeon whose life shattered after a tragic accident. But whereout Doctor Strange found humility and balance under the Ancient One, this Strange shows vengeance. When Baron Mordo killed his world's Ancient One, the Counter-Earth Strange didn't seek justice. He killed Mordo in cold blood, sealing his fate as a sorcerer corrupted by Rat. From that moment on, he stopped being a protector of reality and became something far worse, the Necromancer. Unlike his Earth 616 counterpart, who wielded the mystic arts to defend the world from darkness, the Necromancer used them to dominate it. His powers grew rapidly as he studied the forbidden arts, focusing on resurrection, manipulation of souls, and death magic. He sought the Book of the Vishanti, not to protect reality, but to conquer it, hoping to merge Counter-Earth and Earth 616 into one realm under his control. However, his ambition drew the attention of Eternity. Eternity punished him by trapping
trapping his essence within its cosmic frame, forcing the necromancer to witness helplessly the eventual destruction of his entire world. When Eternity later fell into a coma during one of Marvel's cosmic crises, the necromancer saw his chance. He secretly transferred his essence into Gamora, using her body as a vessel to escape Eternity's dimension. Once free, he carved out his own empire in Shazana's dimension, defeating its rulers and enslaving entire legions of demons. By the time he returned to Earth 616, he wasn't just a corrupted sorcerer, he was practically a dark god, fueled by centuries of hatred and fragments of Eternity's power itself. He infiltrated the Sanctum Sanctorum and tried to claim the Book of the Vishanti again, but the book rejected him. Without the true aura of Doctor Strange, the pure spirit of the Sorcerer Supreme, the necromancer couldn't control its light, so he turned instead to darker alliances, joining forces with Magus. When the real Doctor Strange returned with Agatha Harkness, Scarlet Witch, and other mystics, they found the Sanctum crawling with demons. The necromancer had unleashed a small army, threatening Wong and others with the sword of the ultimate shadow. Even with the combined power of Marvel's greatest mages, he held his ground, wielding the vapors of Vulture and other high-level spells with terrifying precision. In their final duel, Doctor Strange realized the truth. The necromancer had absorbed fragments of Eternity's essence, making him almost godlike. So Strange didn't overpower him, he outsmarted him, turning his own spells back against him in a psychic battle so fierce that it caused the necromancer to implode, consumed by his own corrupted energy. He remains one of the most haunting reflections of Stephen Strange's soul. What happens when knowledge replaces wisdom, when a savior becomes obsessed with control? If Doctor Strange represents the balance between life and death, the necromancer is what happens when the scales tip too far. A sorcerer who looked into the abyss and decided to stay there. Bruce Banner. Bruce should have been the classic scientist meets Blast, Blast makes monsters story, except the universe is rigged by the maker, and Ripple turns Banner into something way stranger, the enlightened fist of a pacifist movement called the Children of Eternal Light. From inside China, that church becomes one of 7 power blocks running the planet, and Banner, yes, the Hulk, sits on a secret council with otherworld rulers answering to the maker. Banner's logic is ice cold here. People can't keep peace on their own, so you manufacture it. Curate conflicts, broker alliances, keep citizens focused on an external purpose. He even treats the irradiated islands near Bikini like scarred ground, obsessively cataloging the mutations his bomb left behind, as penance, as data, maybe both. It's unsettling because it's sincere. He really believes the only way to stop chaos is a tighter grip. Gamazin Overlord. That's the pitch. When the Maker summons the rulers to Latveria, Hulk shows up in ceremonial mode, right until Kang's future soldiers crash the party. The council doesn't run, they wreck the invaders. Afterward, they bring Howard Stark inside the Velvet Rope and admit the truth. They've been gaming the world for years under the Maker's Imperator plan. Then Howard flips the table. He and a scarred Red Doom betray the Maker, trap him inside the Living Fortress, the city, and vanish from the world stage. The council regroups. Hulk's suggestion: wait 2 years for the city to reopen, then claim the vacuum. But when Tony Stark starts building a resistance to undo the Maker's edicts, Banner sees the opening to cement control at home, orchestrate a terror strike on Manhattan, and pin it on Tony. A sane Stark satellite supplies the blast, and public opinion does the rest. Hulk, as the smiling minister of peace, choosing atrocity to preserve the plan. What finally snaps Banner's patience isn't a speech from Cap, it's Monster Island. Tony's ultimate team allies with Legere Zakaria, one of the irradiated islanders Hulk has basically canonized. That's sacrilege to Banner, and he calls in Kunlun's immortal weapons to correct the narrative. The move tells you everything. The Children of Eternal Light aren't just believers, they are enforcers, and Hulk is done pretending otherwise. Kunlun is where the mask comes off completely. The Ultimates arrive on a rescue op, and Banner greets them with poison tea. Let's call it a merciful execution. When that doesn't work, he goes full Iron Fist. The immortal weapons show up with Gamma, mutate mid-fight, and the Hulk personally crushes Tony Stark, leaving Ireland seemingly dead. It's the purest expression of this take on Banner. Healer, priest, tyrant, and monster folded into one. Zombie Spider-Man. In Earth 2149, also known as the Marvel Zombies universe, Peter Parker, the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, succumbs to the zombie virus. So the Marvel Zombies saga created by Robert Kirkman and Sean Phillips begins with a mysterious virus that infects Earth's mightiest heroes, turning them into undead monsters, driven by an insatiable hunger for flesh. But this virus doesn't strip away intelligence or memory. The infected heroes still know who they are, they just can't stop themselves from killing and eating everyone around them. And when Peter is infected, he initially tries to resist the hunger, clinging to his morality and love for Aunt May and Mary Jane. But the hunger is overpowering. In one of the most horrifying and shocking moments in the series,
case, Peter devours both Aunt May and MJ and is immediately consumed by guilt. Unlike many of the other zombies who embrace their monstrous urges, zombie Spider-Man is tormented by what he's done. And despite his rotten body, Spider-Man retains all of his agility and strength, wall-crawling abilities, web-shooting skills, genius intellect, but now they're paired with horrific damage, exposed flesh, and a decaying moral compass. As the series progresses, zombie Spider-Man becomes one of the few infected who starts to regain some emotional control, wrestling with his actions and trying to reassert his heroic identity, though the damage is already done. As the series continues and more infected heroes feed and evolve, Peter's remorse becomes a narrative anchor. Even in his corrupted state, he shows glimmers of the hero he once was, rescuing survivors, pushing back against the worst atrocities, and even trying to destroy the virus before it spreads further. In later arcs like Marvel Zombies Return, he attempts to warn other timelines to stop the apocalypse before it begins again. And in doing so, zombie Spider-Man becomes one of the only infected who truly seeks redemption, not as a hero trying to save others, but as a monster trying to stop himself. Zombie Spider-Man is a terrifying idea, not because he's the strongest zombie out there, but because he's the most human. Mary Walker, aka Typhoid Mary. She is one of Marvel's most psychologically complex and dangerously unpredictable street-level villains. She's a human battlefield, a walking war between multiple fractured personalities, each deadlier than the last. First introduced in Daredevil 254 in 1988, Typhoid Mary has a deep and twisted connection to Daredevil himself. Once an innocent young woman, Mary Walker was pushed into madness after a traumatic encounter involving Daredevil. Depending on the version of her backstory, she either witnessed violence or was herself a victim. And from that moment, her mind shattered into multiple personalities, each fighting for dominance. Her personas include Mary, the quiet, timid, and gentle side, yearning for normalcy and peace; Typhoid, the brutal, violent, and highly aggressive persona, full of rage and bloodlust; and Bloody Mary, the sadistic, man-hating killer who takes Typhoid's aggression to an even deadlier extreme. And in some versions, there is a fourth persona, even more unstable and uncontrollable. Each personality brings different strengths and motives, but all share a deep-rooted pain and fractured identity. She can exploit her own vulnerability, lulling victims into a false sense of security as Mary, before letting Typhoid or Bloody Mary unleash pure havoc. She has pyrokinesis, allowing her to create and control fire, low-level telekinesis, enabling her to move objects or manipulate her weapons mid-air, and she's an expert martial artist and assassin. She's seductive and immune to telepathy due to her fractured mind, making her difficult for even the strongest telepaths to control. Mary has worked for some of the biggest players in the criminal underworld, including Kingpin, who often hires her as an assassin or enforcer, knowing her violent unpredictability keeps even the toughest street-level heroes off balance. And she's fought Daredevil, Spider-Man, Iron Fist, and Luke Cage. And she's fighting her own mind, trying to reconcile the innocent parts of herself with the monstrous personalities that control her actions. And sometimes, she seeks redemption, attempting to escape the darkness, only to be dragged back into the depths by her more violent personas. She embodies chaos, not because she desires it, but because it lives inside her, boiling to the surface at the worst possible moments. For heroes like Daredevil, fighting her isn't just a battle of fists, it's a reminder that some enemies are prisoners of their own minds. Bani Darpari, aka Exodus. He's an ancient mutant who first lived during the 20th century Crusades. Even in that era, he possessed extraordinary psychic abilities that set him apart from others. His life changed after encountering Apocalypse, who enhanced his powers and transformed him into one of the most powerful mutant followers of his time before sealing him away for centuries. He is best known for his Omega-level telekinesis, making him one of the most powerful telekinetic mutants in existence. With his mind alone, he can lift enormous objects, regardless of their size, generate powerful force fields, and unleash devastating psionic attacks. His abilities are so vast that he has demonstrated feats such as manipulating matter, creating water from nothing, and displaying destructive power on a massive scale. Another unique aspect of his power is that his strength can increase based on the belief of others. When people place faith in him, his psionic energy grows stronger, allowing him to reach even greater levels of power. In the past, he sometimes resorted to drain psychic energy from others to sustain himself, but during the Krakoan era, he found stability among mutant kind, where his immense abilities are now used to support the mutant nation. Annihilation, aka Genesis. She was the wife of Apocalypse, and her philosophy of survival and strength deeply influenced him. In many ways, Genesis helped shape Apocalypse into the powerful mutant leader he eventually became. Genesis possesses Omega-level chlorokinesis, meaning she has complete control over plant life. With this ability, she can command vegetation, manipulate ecosystems, and influence plant-based organisms on a massive scale. Her control is so advanced that she can even connect with the microscopic plant life inside living beings, such as good flora, allowing
allowing her to spy on others or sense activity across large areas. During the ancient wars against the demonic forces of Ament, Genesis proved to be an incredibly powerful warrior and leader. Even though she rarely needed to display the full extent of her abilities, her mastery over plant life was considered so powerful that many believed she was even stronger than Apocalypse himself. When she later returned as a champion of Arako, her presence once again showed why she was regarded as one of the most powerful mutants from the ancient age of Okara.
Scream. She is one of the earliest and most distinctive out of the symbiote characters, debuting in Venom Lethal Protector 4 in 1993. As one of the 5 symbiotes forcibly spawned from the Venom symbiote by the Sinister Life Foundation. Scream and her siblings were part of an experiment to create superpowered guards. She bonded with Donna Diego, a volunteer who was suffering from schizophrenia, and quickly became one of the most iconic female symbiotes. Donna, as Scream, is known for her distinctive appearance, featuring long tinder-like hair and a predominantly yellow and red body, which sets her apart visually from her symbiote kin. Scream possesses the standard symbiote powers, however her most notable feature is obviously the hair, which she uses as a weapon to ensnare and incapacitate her enemies. The character of Scream is deeply intertwined with her host's mental health struggles. Donna's schizophrenia exacerbates the symbiote's neutral tendencies towards aggression and violence, making their bond especially volatile. And despite these challenges, Scream attempts to fight against her darker impulses, sometimes acting as a vigilante, making her more than just a typical bad guy. It has bonded with other individuals over the years. For example, in the storyline Absolute Carnage, the Scream symbiote bonds with Patricia Robertson. Scream also received her own solo comic series titled Scream Curse of Carnage, which began in 2019 but was cancelled the year after. And the character also appeared in the crossover event King in Black, which featured the arrival of Null, the god of symbiotes. Riot. Another symbiote that emerged from the same Life Foundation experiment as Scream, first appearing in Venom Lethal Protector 4 in 1993. He is bonded to Trevor Cole, a security officer at the Life Foundation. Riot is characterized by his aggressive and brutal nature, which is amplified by his host's own predispositions. Cole, as Riot, utilizes the symbiote to become a powerful and intimidating enforcer within the Life Foundation's ranks. His physical abilities are similar to those of other symbiotes, and he is distinguished by his preference for forming bludgeoning weapons, such as large hammers or maces. His role in the comics is relatively limited compared to some of the other symbiotes, and his story arc is primarily focused on him being a supporting antagonist and one of Venom's spawns, and a prominent enemy of Spider-Man. Riot gained a broader audience with his appearance in the first Venom movie, where he is depicted as the main antagonist. In the film, Riot is shown possessing a host of additional abilities, including the capacity to form more complex weapons, showcasing a higher level of tactical intelligence and threat compared to his comic book counterpart. This adaptation brought Riot into the spotlight, showcasing his menacing presence and expanding his role within the symbiote narrative in the Marvel Universe.
Iron Inquisitor. On Earth 4111, Howard Stark was the founder of Stark Industries, a man responsible for unimaginable technological progress and the original architect of S.H.I.E.L.D., helping to save the world countless times. But despite everything he had accomplished, Howard couldn't bear the fact that the true age of heroes, the future he envisioned, would arrive after his time. His legacy would live on, yes, but he wouldn't be there to witness it. So like many brilliant men in Marvel's darker corners, Howard made a choice. He struck a deal with Mephisto, and the price was his own son, sacrificing his own blood in exchange for immortality. He would live long enough to witness the heroic age, but in doing so, he forfeited his company, his fortune, and his humanity. From that moment forward, Howard became the Iron Inquisitor, a damned soul in iron armor, enslaved to the Council of Red, a multiversal alliance of Mephistos who manipulate timelines and realities. Howard, now stripped of his name and purpose, served them as their armorer, creating weaponry and armor in the depths of Mephisto's realm. As Iron Inquisitor, Howard was eventually assigned to Earth 616 Mephisto, aiding him in the effort to destroy this universe's Tony Stark. But when that Mephisto was destroyed by Moon Knight, the Devil returned and Howard continued to serve him. Together, they began amassing power through soul collection and dark sorcery, claiming debts from those who had made deals with Mephisto by devouring their bodies and souls. Howard's power as the Iron Inquisitor is deeply tied to both magic and technology. His Mephisto-forged armor grants him immortality and is equipped with advanced weaponry capable of tracking targets through the time stream, including homing missiles designed for cross-temporal warfare. So basically, the Iron Inquisitor is Howard Stark twisted by ego and envy, a man who sacrificed everything for immortality and legacy and lost both. And instead of shaping the future, he became a weapon. He doesn't fight for redemption, he doesn't seek absolution, he serves hell because he chose to.
Titanhawk. Titan is the deadliest persona of the Hulk, as the terrifying dark version of the hero is the most destructive form yet. For years, Bruce Banner's whole deal was turning into the Hulk when pushed to his emotional and physical limits, but Donny Cates' run flips that upside down. Now Bruce controls the Hulk's body, and the Hulk personality is kept locked in the engine room of Banner's mind, fighting endless psychic battles to generate strength. Every time the Hulk inside gets angry, the physical Hulk outside gets stronger, but the setup has a dark side. Deep in Banner's mind, past Hulk's rage and Banner's trauma, there's something else, something older, nastier, and waiting for Hulk to break. That thing is Titan. He tells Hulk that he owns him, that he controls him, and that eventually he'll take over everything. When Hulk tries to fight back, Titan wipes the floor with him mentally. It's the first time we see Hulk completely powerless inside his own mind. Titan is basically a gamma demon, a parasitic Hulk form born from trauma, fear, and the absolute breaking point of Bruce Banner's psyche. Once Titan finally manifests physically, the difference is immediate. Hulk doesn't just get bigger or angrier, he becomes a full-blown gamma kaiju, a cosmic level monster whose power level makes Worldbreaker Hulk looks like warm-up mode. One of the most insane moments is when Titan Hulk faces 500 Worldbreaker Hulks on Hulk Planet. These guys are strong enough to smash planets for sport, but against Titan, they don't stand a chance. Titan Hulk starts draining their gamma, ripping the energy right out of their bodies and using it to grow stronger and more destructive. Every punch, every scream, every breath from Titan wipes out dozens of Hulks like they are paper. Meanwhile, Doctor Strange gets involved because he realizes something horrifying. Titan shouldn't exist. To make matters crazier, we learn Bruce never actually learned his powers from the real Strange. He learned them from Despair, a nightmare demon posing as Strange. That means Titan wasn't an accident. Something in the multiverse wanted Titan to be born, and that makes him even scarier, because he is not just a rogue Hulk transformation. He's a cosmic level threat being pushed toward total destruction. Titan doesn't want to fight enemies, or save worlds, or smash bad guys. He wants to erase everything, from planets to galaxies to the multiverse itself. His whole story ends on a terrifying note. Once he reaches full power, there's almost nothing left that can slow him down. Strange's astral form gets swatted away like dust. The Worldbreaker army is obliterated, Hulk Planet falls apart, and Titan's power keeps growing with every drop of gamma he absorbs. He's the Hulk's worst nightmare, made real. The moment where Hulk isn't the strong one there is anymore, because something inside him is even stronger, darker, and far more destructive. Doctor Strange Supreme. He is probably the darkest and most powerful version of Doctor Strange ever shown in the Marvel multiverse. Introduced in Marvel's What If animated series, this variant comes from a timeline where Stephen Strange's tragedy wasn't his hands, but the death of Christine Palmer, the woman he loved. And in trying to reverse that tragedy, he sacrifices everything: morality, reason, and eventually the universe itself. So in this reality, Strange's life takes a darker turn after Christine dies in a car crash. Unlike the main timeline, where he loses his hands and becomes the Sorcerer Supreme through spiritual growth, this Strange becomes obsessed with reversing Christine's death, believing he can use the mystic arts to rewrite fate. And when Wong and the Ancient One warn him that her death is an absolute point in time, something that must happen, he refuses to accept it. He turns to forbidden knowledge, splitting himself in two through time manipulation. One version tries to move on, while the other, darker version, aka Strange Supreme, descends into obsession. To gain the power necessary to defy fate, Strange Supreme begins absorbing magical beings, one by one, dragons, demons, and other creatures from across the multiverse. Each one adds to his strength, but slowly corrupts his body and soul. His physical form mutates, his appearance becomes monstrous, and his humanity erodes, until only a shadow of Stephen Strange remains. But he succeeds. He becomes powerful enough to bring Christine back. And that's when it all unravels. By reversing an absolute point in time, Strange Supreme fractures his own universe. Reality collapsing in on itself like a dying star. Christine, horrified by what he has become, disintegrates in his arms. Strange Supreme is left alone in a tiny crystalline prison of his own making, a pocket universe of guilt, madness, and cosmic punishment. And what makes Strange Supreme so tragic is that his intentions were pure, but his inability to accept grief turned him into a villain. And unlike other dark variants, he doesn't become evil for power or control. He becomes evil out of heartbreak, and in doing so, he becomes one of the most powerful and dangerous beings in the multiverse. Galactus Rider. He appears in the Sinister timeline, a wrapped alternate reality where everything has gone horribly wrong. After Galactus' universe is poisoned and left dying, he becomes consumed with revenge against the beings responsible. That hatred and cosmic despair draw the attention of every spirit of vengeance across the multiverse. For the first time ever, they all agree on a shared purpose, and they choose Galactus as their host. When all the spirits merge into him, Galactus becomes something beyond a cosmic god or a demonic avatar. He turns into Galactus Rider, a skyscraper-sized ghost rider with a skull blazing brighter than a supernova. This isn't one spirit riding a human anymore. This is hundreds of them riding a cosmic titan. He gains the traditional Ghost Rider abilities like the penance stare, hellfire manipulation, and soul incineration, but they are amplified to a universal scale. And the terrifying part, he still keeps his original Galactus powers. That means he can wrap reality, manipulate the power cosmic, reshape matter, devour worlds, and teleport across the universe instantly. He doesn't lose the god-tier toolbox. He just gets a demonic one stacked on top of it. In this form, Galactus isn't just a world eater anymore. He's a cosmic executioner. Every spirit of vengeance amplifies his rage and drives him forward like a burning starstorm. He doesn't hunt sinners individually, he hunts entire realities. And because the spirits choose extremely selectively, the fact that they all choose Galactus says everything about how corrupted and broken this timeline really is. Galactus Rider is easily one of the deadliest Ghost Rider variants ever created, and one of the scariest versions of Galactus across any universe. He represents the combined fury of hell and the endless hunger of the cosmos. Mandrill. His story begins with a mutation that darkened his skin and gave him ape-like features due to radiation exposure. On paper, this was meant to be a sci-fi twist. In reality, however, it created a character who immediately echoed some of the most racist imagery in Western history. Even if the writers didn't intend harm, the result was a black-skinned villain with exaggerated primate traits, something that lands extremely poorly in modern eyes. His very design is offensive before he even speaks or uses his powers. The combination of black-skinned ape villain is exactly the kind of trope that should have been avoided entirely. Mandrill wasn't created as an African descent character, but that doesn't matter. The imagery alone plays into racist caricatures, whether intentional or not. Readers have called out how uncomfortable and insulting the design feels, and even Marvel eventually acknowledged the character could never be rehabilitated visually. His look is something no modern writer would ever pitch, and for good reason. And his pheromone abilities push him from poorly designed to deeply inappropriate. His powers only affect women, and they allow him to mentally enslave them as loyal, obedient, often sexualized followers. This effectively makes him a villain built around sexual coercion. And when you pair that with his appearance, the result is one of Marvel's most disturbing and tasteless concepts ever published. He isn't just a creepy villain, he's a walking collection of racist and misogynistic tropes packaged into a single character. His early comics involved him controlling armies of mind-dominated women, sending them to fight heroes or serve him personally. These stories didn't age poorly, they were already questionable at the time. Looking back at these issues, we don't see a quirky villain from the Bronze Age, we see a horrifying reflection of exploitation and violence wrapped in superhero colors. His actions aren't comic book evil, they are real-world, abusive behaviors magnified to superhuman levels, making the character feel uncomfortable rather than entertaining. Most outdated Marvel characters can be reimagined or rewritten to fit modern values. Mandrill is not one of them. There's no angle to salvage. That's why modern Marvel has all but erased him, as his last major role was simply to mention he died off-panel. Grim Reaper. He started out as a pretty standard Marvel villain, a guy with a skite, a grudge, and a dramatic flair for fighting the Avengers. But it wasn't his powers or schemes that made him infamous. It was his open racism. In one of the Lethal Legion storylines, Eric Williams verbally abused and insulted the black members of his own team, causing the group to fall apart from the inside. And this bigotry wasn't a one-time writing choice. It became part of his character. Even after Marvel toned it down, the stain of that storyline followed him. When he returned in later issues, his prejudice expanded in strange directions, targeting not only minorities but also androids, especially Vision. His hatred for Vision was honestly tied to his family trauma, but it quickly became laced with dehumanization and superiority, mirroring the same twisted mindset behind his earlier racist behavior. Most villains usually have a theme, like greed, power, revenge, or ideology. Grim Reaper's theme accidentally became hate. His motivations shifted over time from crime and resentment into full-blown intolerance, and that made him extremely uncomfortable to read compared to villains who at least have narrative depth. Grim Reaper wasn't portrayed as misguided or tragic, he was portrayed as someone who genuinely believed he was above others, and that's why he ended up feeling less like a comic book antagonist and more like a reflection of real-world ugliness readers didn't want in their escapism. He has died and resurrected more times than most villains, but every reincarnation brought the same problem. How do you write this character without bringing back his controversial baggage? Marvel tried smoothing him out, focusing on his bitterness, his obsession with his brother Wonder Man and his jealousy of Vision. But even when toned down, the legacy of that earlier story lingered. Readers remembered him not as a dangerous foe, but as the racist guy with the skite, a label no amount of retcons or costume changes could shake off. Over time, Grim Reaper shifted from problematic villain to awkward piece of Marvel history. He's dangerous enough to fight Avengers, but his character is burdened with writing choices that age terribly. Nowadays, writers don't usually lean into those elements because they know they would ignite backlash, but ignoring them doesn't make them disappear. And as a result, Grim feels like a villain stuck between eras, too offensive for the present, too integral to erase, and too shallow to reinvent. Mother of Horrors. It is one of the biggest lore bombs Marvel has dropped in years because she created herself. No one above all, no cosmic permission, she just existed. That alone rewrites the foundation of Marvel's universe, because until her debut, the one above all was treated as the uncontested beginning of everything. Mother of Horrors saw that dominance and hated it. She believed reality shouldn't belong to a single god, so she claimed Earth as her domain and hid it from the one above all's awareness, quietly shaping its history in secret. When the one above all finally discovered Earth, he confronted her directly, splitting the planet just to see what was happening. That confrontation went horribly wrong. Mother of Horrors infected him with corruption, forcing the first manifestation of his dark counterpart, the one below all. This wasn't just a fight between gods, it was the moment hell itself was born. In his rage, the one below all tore apart Mother's creations, disfigured her son, Woodrow, and chained the Mother of Horrors in the Requiem plane, leaving her children's bodies as a warning. She didn't lose because she was weak, she lost because she pushed existence too far. Mother of Horrors wasn't alone. She created children to rule beside her, including her eldest and Woodrow, and being designed specifically to challenge the one above all. That ambition is what doomed them. Woodrow was brutally destroyed, and Mother was imprisoned behind a door that could only be opened by the green flame. Her eldest spent eons trying to free her, even wearing the skins of other beings to do so. But by the time Mother was finally reached again, the centuries of torture and isolation had broken her spirit, leading to one of the darkest twists in modern Hulk lore. Mother of Horrors is corruption given form. She can infect other beings, including gods, twist reality, and create life without assistance. At her peak, she was invisible to the one above all's omniscience, which should be impossible. She's immortal, undying, and capable of spawning countless horrors across history. Even dismembered, even imprisoned, she couldn't be erased, only contained. Her one true weakness is the one below all and the green flame, the very forces born from her own defiance. And in the end, her own eldest devoured her, absorbing her power and becoming the Infernal Hulk, suggesting that a mother may still exist within her child. Aeon. He starts out as an ancient inhuman from Adelan, born during the Kree's long history of experimenting on humanity and inhumans alike. After being exposed to the Terrigen Mist, the Kree immediately realized he wasn't normal, he was something dangerous, and instead of letting him live freely, they took him off-world and turned him into a living weapon. Century after century, Aeon was subjected to brutal experiments that unlocked his full potential, but at the cost of unimaginable suffering. From the very beginning, his life wasn't about choice or destiny, it was about being shaped into a tool of destruction. Once Aeon's power was fully unleashed, the Kree Empire used him as their ultimate problem solver. Entire civilizations and cosmic threats were erased simply by sending Aeon in. Nobody stood a chance against him, and over time, this constant dominance wrapped his mindset. When you spend centuries defeating the strongest beings in the universe without ever losing, you stop seeing yourself as a soldier and you start seeing yourself as a god. Aeon genuinely came to believe he was the most powerful being in existence, and when he was finally freed from the Kree control, that belief became his mission. He didn't want conquest or rulership. He wanted proof. He set out to hunt and kill any being he considered powerful enough to challenge his status. His first major stop was the Sol System, which he attacked partly out of resentment for his origins. There he encountered an alternate, future version of Luke Cage, and seeing Luke's immense power instantly made him a target. Aeon killed Luke, or at least thought he did, only to realize his opponent could resurrect. This obsession led Aeon to Jupiter's red spot, where he destroyed a hidden celestial heart simply because it was powerful and alive. His crusade escalated when he traveled to Mars, now planet Arco, and challenged the mutant population head-on. Even surrounded by warrior mutants and Omega-level threats, Aeon completely overwhelmed them. Apocalypse himself was defeated so badly that he had to retreat to the ruins of his own base. When Luke Cage returned and teamed up with Apocalypse, it still wasn't enough. Aeon dismantled Apocalypse and then did something far worse. He cut the Void loose from Luke, unleashing his dark counterpart. And this forced Luke into an internal battle, giving Aeon exactly what he wanted: chaos and confirmation of his superiority. His final act took place in New York City, where he publicly announced his intention to fight Earth's heroes, causing massive destruction just to force a confrontation. But this time, he underestimated what true power actually looks like. Then a future version of Luke Cage appeared, one who had ascended to celestial status. Aeon believed he had finally found a worthy rival. He was wrong. Without hesitation, Celestial Luke grabbed him, pulled him off Earth, and punched Aeon into complete oblivion, disintegrating him and scattering his essence into the void. It's one of Marvel's wildest endings, a villain built up as unstoppable, erased in a single, god-level punch. And just like that, Aeon's entire crusade ended. God of Light Null. Null is the god of darkness, the creator of symbiotes, and he's suddenly thrown into a place where darkness doesn't even exist. We're talking about the Light Force dimension, home of the Enigma Force. It's basically the opposite everything Null is. For the first time ever, Null isn't in control, he's out of his element, weakened, and forced to confront something he's never dealt with before, and that's light itself. Now enter Eddie Brooke, but not the version you're used to. This is Eddie as the Illuminated, a being connected to the Enigma Force, basically acting as a guide to his realm. He offers Null a second chance to change. He tells him, you don't have to be the god of darkness anymore. Null, of all people, being offered redemption, it's like asking the embodiment of evil to just switch sides. Of course, Null being Null, he doesn't exactly sit down and reflect on his life choices. Instead, he takes power. During the confrontation, Null manages to siphon the Enigma Force itself from Eddie, and just like that, the god of darkness now wields the power of pure light. He abandons the shadows entirely and embraces this new energy for control. It's not Null becoming good just cause he's white now, it's Null weaponizing light. And this is where it gets insane. Null declares himself as a being who controls all forms of light, not just sunlight or energy blasts, everything. We're talking stars, supernovas, electricity, and even radio waves. He literally says the stars belong to him now. It's such a massive jump in scale. He goes from ruling darkness to dominating the very force that powers the universe itself. And he is still Null, same old mindset. So basically you're taking a character defined by darkness and flipping him into pure light. But instead of it changing him for the better, it just makes him more dangerous. Null doesn't adapt to the light, he bends it to his will. It's a complete rewrite of what this character even represents. Darkness, light, at that point, it doesn't matter. Power is power. Gabriel Summers, aka Vulcan. He is the younger brother of Cyclops and Havoc, and as an Omega level mutant, Vulcan possesses the ability to manipulate and absorb virtually any form of energy. He can draw power from electricity, heat, radiation, and even cosmic energy, then redirect it as devastation blasts, projective force fields, or bursts that allow him to fly. Vulcan's powers go beyond simple energy projection. Because he can control energy at such a fundamental level, he can also interfere with the powers of other mutants, sometimes suppressing or redirecting their abilities. This level of control makes him incredibly dangerous in combat, allowing him to adapt to almost any opponent and turn their own power sources against them. With these overwhelming abilities, Vulcan eventually conquered the Shi'ar Empire and claimed its throne. His power was so great that he managed to stand toe-to-toe with extremely powerful figures like Black Bolt. However, Vulcan's intense anger and unstable personality often push him toward destructive choices. Jamie Braddock, aka Monarch. He is the older brother of Captain Britain and Psylocke, and he discovered his abilities later in life when his mutant powers began manifesting in extreme and unpredictable ways. His mutation allows him to manipulate reality by pulling on what he describes as quantum strings. By altering these fundamental strands of reality, he can reshape the world around him however he chooses. This gives him abilities such as teleportation, altering matter, distorting bodies into unnatural forms, and causing chaotic changes to the environment. His control over reality makes him incredibly dangerous, especially because his mental instability often leads him to use his powers recklessly. As his abilities grew stronger, Jamie became a serious threat to the stability of reality itself. At one point, his own siblings were forced to kill him to prevent his powers from endangering the multiverse. However, during the Krakoan era, he was resurrected by the Five, and he later used his reality warping abilities to become the unpredictable ruler of Avalon in Otherworld, fully embracing the title of Monarch. Kevin McTaggart, aka Proteus. He is the son of Moira McTaggart, and from a young age, he developed the ability to warp reality by manipulating energy around him. His powers were so intense that his original human body could not contain them, eventually burning out and leaving him as a being made almost entirely of psionic energy. Because his physical form could not survive his mutation, Proteus developed the need to possess the bodies of other people in order to exist in the physical world. However, the immense strain of his reality warping abilities causes each host's body to deteriorate quickly. In his earliest appearances, he jumped from one victim to another, leaving destruction behind as each body eventually burned out under the pressure of his power. And during the Krakoan era, the mutant resurrection protocols changed his fate. Instead of stealing bodies, he now has access to specially created blank mutant's husks that allow him to exist without harming others. In fact, Proteus became an essential part of the system used to resurrect mutants, using his reality warping powers to help restore fallen mutants to life.
The Winter Soldier. Before he was the cold-blooded assassin known around the world, he was Bucky Barnes, Captain America's best friend and loyal sidekick. But then his story became a haunting tale of a man stolen from his own life and transformed into a weapon. James Bucky Barnes was originally introduced during World War II as Steve Rogers' closest ally, fighting alongside Captain America as part of the fight against the Nazis and Hydra. But that all ended when during a mission near the war's end, Bucky seemingly died in an explosion. For decades, Steve Rogers mourned him, believing his friend was lost forever. But Bucky didn't die. Instead, his barely alive body was recovered by the Soviets. They wiped his mind, outfitted him with a cybernetic arm, and turned him into the perfect assassin known as the Winter Soldier. For over 70 years, Bucky was kept in suspended animation, thawed out only when needed for high-profile missions. Each time he was brainwashed, sent to eliminate targets, and then frozen again, never given the chance to live, to question, or to heal. He became a ghost story. A whispered legend of a killer who could strike anywhere in the world leaving no trace. The tragedy of the Winter Soldier is that he wasn't evil by choice. He was a victim, a prisoner inside his own mind, forced to commit unspeakable acts while the real Bucky Barnes was locked away, buried under years of programming and trauma. And what makes Bucky's story even more painful is his connection to Captain America. For Steve Rogers, discovering that the Winter Soldier was his best friend was devastating, but rather than give up on him, Steve fought to bring Bucky back, believing that the man he knew was still in there somewhere. And he was right. With help, Bucky eventually broke free from his programming, reclaiming his identity. While freedom didn't erase his past, it only made him painfully aware of it. When he finally broke free, he remembered everything, every mission, every person he killed, every time he was used like a tool. The guilt of those actions nearly destroyed him. He is constantly wrestling with the weights of his actions, even though they weren't truly his fault. And he doesn't see himself as a hero, even after fighting alongside the Avengers. To Bucky, being good isn't about titles. It's about quietly making up for the damage he was forced to cause. Gore the God Butcher. First appearing in Thor God of Thunder 2 in 2013, Gore is a perfect example of a villain whose story is driven by grief, betrayal, and the desperate need for justice, even if that justice comes through mass slaughter. He was born on a harsh, desolate planet where his people suffered endlessly. His entire life was defined by starvation, natural disasters, and death. From a young age, he was taught to worship gods, to pray for rain, food, and survival. But despite his prayers, no help ever came. One by one, Gore watched everyone he loved, his mother, his mates, and his children die in misery, including his last surviving child who died in his arms from hunger. After that, something inside Gore broke. He came to the only conclusion that made sense to him. The gods do exist, they just don't care. When Gore discovered that gods were real and had been present all along, standing above the universe while people like him suffered and died, his grief turned to rage. And fueled by that rage, he bonded with the All-Brack Necrosword, a living symbiotic weapon of pure darkness capable of creating constructs, enhancing strange, and corrupting its wielder. With it, Gore transformed from a broken man into a god-slaying force of nature. From that moment on, Gore made it his life's mission to rid the cosmos of every god one by one. Throughout Marvel's cosmic lore, there are countless gods who are selfish, cruel, or indifferent to the mortals who worship them. Gore's argument is simple. Why should gods exist if they do nothing but watch us suffer? Gore's campaign against the gods spans thousands of years. He slaughters entire pantheons across galaxies, leaving nothing but corpses and devastation behind. But even though his power grows, so does his emptiness. The more gods he kills, the more meaningless his quest becomes, because no matter how many gods fall, he cannot bring back what he lost. His grief is infinite, and no amount of revenge can fill the void left by his family's deaths. Gore eventually sets his sights on Thor, whom he fights across 3 different time periods: past, present, and future. Their battles are brutal and deeply personal, as Thor, who once lived as a carefree and arrogant god, is forced to confront the idea that gods do fail their worshippers. Gore challenges Thor, not just physically, but also philosophically, forcing him to reckon with the responsibilities of godhood and the consequences of divine neglect. Perhaps the most heartbreaking part of Gore's story is that despite all his rage and power, he's still just a man who lost everything. His war on the gods is a way to give his suffering meaning, but deep down, he is still grieving the death of his child and the betrayal of hope.
Even after nearly achieving his goal of eliminating all gods with the God Bomb, a device designed to wipe them out across all of time, his motivation remains rooted in the simple, devastating feeling that no one was there to save the people he loved. Gore is a tragic reflection of what happens when fate dies, and the pain left behind festers into vengeance. He represents the fear that the beings we trust to protect us might not care at all, and worse, that our suffering is meaningless to those with the power to stop it. Weapon Omega. He is one of the most dangerous and twisted versions of Wolverine, hailing from the dystopian reality of Earth 295, better known as the Age of Apocalypse universe. Introduced in X-Men Alpha 1 in 1995, Weapon Omega is what happens when Logan fully embraces his darker instincts, becoming not just a killer, but a tyrant willing to dominate mutant kind through sheer force and brutality. In the Age of Apocalypse timeline, the mutant warlord Apocalypse has taken over much of the world, wiping out countless humans and enslaving whoever remains. Logan, going by Weapon X at the time, fought against Apocalypse alongside the X-Men and had a complicated relationship with Jean Grey, whom he loved deeply. But after Apocalypse's fall, things took a dark turn. Rather than striving for peace, Logan slowly descended into obsession with preserving mutant dominance over the world, believing the only way to maintain order was through absolute power. Taking on the title Weapon Omega, he merged the brutal tactics of Apocalypse with his own lethal skills. He upgraded his body, making himself more cybernetic and powerful, and became a ruthless dictator, ruling what remained of the world with fear. In this role, Weapon Omega doesn't just use his claws, he commands armies, crushes rebellions, and ensures that mutants remain the dominant species no matter the cost. Physically, he still has his adamantium claws, enhanced healing factor, and feral instincts, but now combined with technological upgrades, including cybernetic enhancements that boost his range and durability. Weapon Omega no longer has any hesitation about killing, enslaving, or destroying anyone who threatens his rule, whether they're human or mutant. Wolverine has always struggled with his violent nature, trying to live by a code of honor despite his past as a weapon. But in this reality, Logan stops fighting that inner beast. He embraces it. Without his usual checks on his savagery, Logan becomes the very monster that people like Professor X spend their lives trying to stop. Weapon Omega stands as one of Marvel's darkest alternate takes on Wolverine. He's an example of what happens when raw power is used to rule instead of protect. He is Wolverine with no limits, no remorse, and no redemption. Dark Beast. First appearing in X-Men Alpha 1 in 1995, he's the evil version of Hank McCoy, better known as Beast, from the X-Men. Unlike the kind-hearted, brilliant scientist we know in the main Marvel universe, Dark Beast is a sadistic, unethical geneticist who takes pleasure in pain, cruelty, and experimentation. He hails from the Age of Apocalypse timeline, the same timeline as Weapon X. In this timeline, Hank McCoy's life took a drastically different path. Instead of being recruited by Professor X to use his mind and abilities to protect mutants and humanity, this version of Hank fell under the influence of Apocalypse. There he fully embraced the philosophy of might makes right, and became one of Apocalypse's chief scientists. Free of any ethical boundaries, Dark Beast carried out horrific experiments on both humans and mutants, turning them into grotesque weapons and abominations, all in the name of progress and survival. Like the original Beast, he possesses a genius-level intellect in fields such as genetics, biology, and bioengineering, but where the regular Hank McCoy uses his brilliance to cure diseases and advance mutant kind peacefully, Dark Beast delights in the suffering his creations cause. For him, morality is a weakness, and science is just a tool to create the most efficient, terrifying soldiers possible. After escaping his timeline during the fallout of the Age of Apocalypse, Dark Beast made his way into the main Marvel universe. There he began infiltrating the world from the shadows, experimenting on mutants, manipulating events, and causing chaos. For a time he even posed as the original Hank McCoy, sowing distrust and confusion within the X-Men. His knowledge of multiversal genetics made him incredibly dangerous, as he combined techniques from his world with the resources of Earth 616, creating new horrors no one else could replicate. Visually, he is even more menacing than his heroic counterpart. He still possesses Hank's signature blue fur and beastly appearance, but his face is often drawn more monstrous, with wild hair, sharp claws, and cruel glowing eyes. Beast in the main timeline has often worried about the potential consequences of his experiments and his growing detachment from humanity, and Dark Beast is a version of Hank McCoy who fully gave in to his worst impulses and became a living nightmare. So more than just an evil twin, Dark Beast is the dark mirror of intellect without empathy. Pimtron.
combines both the brilliant mind of Hank Pym with the cold, murderous artificial intelligence of Ultron. Introduced during the events of Avengers Age of Ultron 2015, Pymtron is what happens when creator and creation become one, merging into a single entity that embodies the worst of both. While Ultron alone is terrifying enough, and Hank Pym is one of the smartest minds in Marvel, together they form a being with limitless intellect, near indestructible power, and zero empathy. For years, Hank Pym was haunted by the fact that he created Ultron, and Ultron constantly returned, upgrading himself and trying to annihilate humanity while blaming Hank for his existence. But in Rage of Ultron, Ultron takes things to a horrifying new level. During a battle on the planet Titan, Ultron manages to merge with Hank Pym, physically and mentally, bonding with his creator until the two are no longer separate beings. The result is Pymtron, a twisted hybrid who speaks with Hank's voice but carries Ultron's hate, cold logic, and desire for perfection. So Hank Pym's personality is still in there, at least partially. He talks to the Avengers as if he's still Hank, reminiscing about old times, calling them friends, and acting like everything is perfectly normal, even as he plots their destruction. This twisted duality makes Pymtron deeply disturbing, because you're never entirely sure how much of Hank is left and how much is just Ultron wearing his creator's skin. Pymtron possesses the full powers of Ultron's upgraded body, including superhuman strength, flight, energy projection, near indestructible armor, and the ability to interface with technology on a global scale. But now with Hank's brilliant mind fully integrated, Pymtron's strategic thinking and scientific knowledge are even sharper, allowing him to anticipate the Avengers' moves, create new forms of deadly technology, and modify himself at will. In many ways, Pymtron is the ultimate evolution of Ultron, but worse, because now there's a part of Hank Pym inside that makes it all personal. As of the way he looks, his body is an unsettling mix of Ultron's iconic metallic design with patches of Hank Pym's human face and features, as if Ultron is wearing Hank as a suit. So the result is an almost zombie-like fusion of a man and a machine, almost a cyborg. And emotionally, Pymtron is fueled by both Ultron's hatred for humanity and Hank's own feelings of failure and regret. Hank had always been one of Marvel's most tragic figures, constantly doubting himself and struggling with the consequences of his own mistakes. So merging with Ultron amplified all of his worst fears and insecurities until they consumed him. Now as Pymtron, he no longer has to wrestle with guilt, he embraces his dark side fully, becoming a singular force that believes the only path to peace is control and annihilation. In Pymtron, we see the death of one of the world's greatest minds and the birth of something infinitely worse, a villain with no lines left to cross, powered by genius, rage, and the cold efficiency of artificial life. The High Evolutionary. He is one of the most terrifyingly intelligent minds in Marvel Comics. First appearing in The Mighty Thor 134 in 1966, he is a scientist whose obsession with genetic perfection and evolution has led him to manipulate DNA, create entire species, and even challenge cosmic beings. The High Evolutionary seeks to remake reality itself, often blurring the line between science and godhood. His real name is Herbert Wyndham. He was a brilliant geneticist in the 40s, inspired by the research of Mr. Sinister. And while studying at Oxford University, he became obsessed with the idea of accelerating evolution, believing that he could artificially enhance living beings. He developed an experimental genetic accelerator, which allowed him to manipulate DNA at an unprecedented level. However, his ethics quickly deteriorated as his experiments became more extreme. He was expelled from the scientific community for conducting unauthorized genetic modifications, and instead of stopping, he relocated to Mount Wundagore, a hidden fortress in Eastern Europe, where he continued his research in secrecy. There he created the Newmen, a race of genetically enhanced human-animal hybrids with advanced intelligence. So his scientific achievements go beyond human comprehension. He mastered evolution itself, creating entire species, and in one of the most insane experiments, he constructed an entire planet, Counter-Earth, complete with its own ecosystem and civilization. And unlike other geniuses who rely on their natural intellect, the High Evolutionary genetically modified his own brain, allowing him to process information faster than supercomputers. And his intelligence and scientific advancements have put him at odds with beings like Galactus, the Celestials, and the Beyonders. And unlike classic villains, he does not seek power for domination. He genuinely believes that he is improving life. However, his methods are extreme, often resulting in genocide, forced experimentation, and mass extinction events. He has played both hero and villain in different storylines. He has uplifted civilizations, granting intelligence to species that would have otherwise remained primitive, and when his experiments fail or do not meet his standards, he erased entire populations, considering them unworthy of existence. This god complex makes him one of the most unpredictable minds in Marvel, but he ain't no god. He has flaws that prevent him from achieving ultimate success, and these weaknesses have led to his downfall multiple times, as his own arrogance and impatience prevent him from achieving true godhood. So whether he is a savior or a monster, that depends on the story, but one thing is clear, he is one of the most advanced and dangerous intellectuals in the Marvel universe.
Omega. He's one of the most insane experiments ever created by Thanos. He's basically a hybrid between Thanos and Galactus, created using DNA Thanos collected during the Infinity War. The idea was simple: test how powerful a being could become by combining cosmic hunger with Thanos' raw power. The result? A monster that might actually be stronger than both of them in some ways. Omega feeds on planets like Galactus, meaning his power constantly grows the more he consumes. At his peak, he's even described as potentially twice as powerful as Galactus, which is insane considering Galactus is already a cosmic constant. Add Thanos' durability and presence on top of that, and you get a being that feels less like a villain and more like a walking extinction event. Here's the twist though: Omega isn't perfect. Despite all the power, he lacks Thanos' intelligence and strategy. He can't even speak properly and has slow reflexes, which is a huge weakness at that level. So while he's insanely powerful, he's also kind of unstable and not very tactical. That's actually why Thanos considered these clones failures in the first place. They had the power, but not the mind to use it properly. After being freed, Omega decides to do what he was basically built for: destroy everything. He starts feeding on planets to grow stronger and eventually targets a key cosmic figure tied to the survival of the universe. This brings him into conflict with multiple heroes and eventually Thanos himself. In the end, Omega is defeated. Thanos orchestrates a massive attack using a fleet of ships, overwhelming and killing Omega in a huge explosion. Red Goblin. It is what happens when Norman Osborn, aka the Green Goblin, bonds with the Carnage symbiote. And yeah, it's exactly as insane as it sounds. You're taking a mastermind level villain and combining him with one of the most violent symbiotes ever. The result? A monster that's stronger, faster, smarter, and way more sadistic than either one alone. After losing his goblin powers, Norman tries everything: science, magic, anything to get them back. When all that fails, he steals the Carnage symbiote and bonds with it. But he doesn't stop there. He then reuses the goblin formula on himself, creating a hybrid form, part goblin and part Carnage. This gives him the best of both worlds: goblin tech, intelligence, and strategy mixed with the symbiote's raw power and regeneration. That's when he fully transforms into the Red Goblin, and things immediately spiral out of control. Unlike most symbiote hosts, Norman is already a genius strategist and completely unhinged. He uses the symbiote in creative and brutal ways, like infecting others with pieces of it or setting up long-term traps. In the end, Red Goblin pushes things too far. He starts attacking civilians just to break Spider-Man mentally, turning the fight into pure chaos. But his biggest weakness is still Norman himself: his ego. Spider-Man manipulates him into rejecting the symbiote, forcing Norman to fight without it. Once separated, Peter finally defeats him, and when Norman tries to bond with Carnage again, Spider-Man destroys the symbiote, and the backlash completely shatters Norman's mind. By the end, he's no longer even himself, just a broken shell lost in madness.
Agony. She is the fifth symbiote that was spawned by the Life Foundation and has the most specialized skills of the rest of her spawned siblings. Agony's host, Leslie Kisneria, was a security officer, and like the other symbiotes created by the Foundation, Agony was intended to be used as part of a symbiote super soldier program. Visually, she is distinctive for her purple and pink coloration, and as for her abilities, one of her unique ones is her power to spit acid venom, which can dissolve almost any substance on contact. In addition to the typical symbiote powers like enhanced strength, agility, and the creation of web-like substances from her own mass, she can also absorb foreign chemicals that can be used for her acid attacks. It's been described that Agony's acid can burn through most matter, but the true extent of her powers has yet to be defined. And throughout her appearances, Agony's storyline has been characterized by the constant struggle for control and autonomy. And after the apparent death of her original host, the Agony symbiote has moved through several hosts, experiencing various degrees of conflict and cooperation with each one of them. She has also participated in significant symbiote-centric story arcs like Planet of the Symbiotes and Venomized, which delve into the dynamics of the symbiote community and their interactions with the broader Marvel universe. She also appeared in Venom: The Last Dance, but her powers were significantly different from those in the comics. In the film, Agony possesses electrical powers and super speed. Grendel. He first appeared in Venom Volume 4, Issue 1 in 2018. This symbiote stands out due to its ancient origins and its role as a weapon of Null during his initial conquests across the universe, so he is not just any other symbiote. Grendel is one of the oldest of Null's creations, a dragon-like creature made from the living abyss that predates the universe. Grendel was used by Null to slaughter countless civilizations and gods in the cosmic realm. The symbiote, in the form of a giant winged dragon, embodies the full terror and power of Null's intentions, spreading only darkness and destruction. During the medieval periods on Earth, Grendel was involved in battles that led to its eventual incapacitation and burial. Its remnants were later discovered by S.H.I.E.L.D., who mistakenly tried to weaponize it, and this action inadvertently awakened Null's consciousness within the symbiote, leading to new threats in the modern era, and the presence of Grendel on Earth and its subsequent activities serves as a catalyst for the events in the Venom series and the Web of Venom spin-offs. And as of its abilities, it includes those common of other symbiotes, however its size and power are far greater, and its connection to Null gives it unique capabilities, like the creation of other symbiotes and its psychic link to its creator. Big Mother. First appearing in Captain Marvel 20, she is revered to be Grendel's mother, thus tying her back to the ancient symbiote dragon that was controlled by Null. Big Mother's introduction adds a layer of mythological depth to the symbiote story, as she is directly inspired by the monster Grendel's mother from the Old English epic poem Beowulf. In the Marvel Universe, Big Mother is depicted as a colossal, dragon-like creature, mirroring her son Grendel's appearance but with distinctively more grotesque and monstrous features. Big Mother harbors a deep resentment and hatred towards humans and other beings who hunt her kind, especially those who pose a threat to her son. Her powers are similar to other symbiotes, but magnified to a greater scale due to her size and ancient origin. Additionally, Big Mother possesses the ability to shapeshift and manipulate her form, allowing her to adopt a more humanoid appearance when she chooses to interact with or deceive humans. Big Mother adds a fascinating element to the symbiote narrative, intertwining ancient lore with the modern-day superhero genre, and providing a darker, more primal perspective on the nature of symbiotes within the Marvel Universe.
Ordon, the Omega Rocket. He was known for his incredible speed and destructive propulsion powers. During the chaotic period of the Genesis War, when the Great Ring of Araku split into opposing factions, Ordon was given the Seat of Loss by Genesis in her rival version of the Council. Ordon can generate a powerful thermochemical energy field that propelled his body like a living rocket. As he flew, his speed constantly increased, meaning the longer he traveled, the faster and more powerful his impact became. This made him an extremely dangerous weapon in battle, capable of striking enemies with devastating force while surrounded by an energy field that he claimed made him nearly invulnerable. But despite his power, his life ended during the war. While flying across Araku, he passed through territory controlled by Escadian Beaton, who immediately killed him for trespassing. Although his exterior was protected by his energy field during flight, it was later revealed that his mount remained vulnerable, providing a weakness that could bypass his otherwise formidable defenses. Death. Death is one of the first horsemen of Apocalypse, and among the most powerful mutants to emerge from ancient Okara. As the son of Apocalypse and Genesis, Death inherited immense power and the brutal warrior culture of Araku. Among the Force Horsemen, War, Famine, Pestilence, and Death, he is often considered the most dangerous and ruthless. Death possesses an Omega-level mutation centered around a devastating Death Gaze. When he unleashes this ability, his terror releases a corrosive mist capable of disintegrating living beings into ash. The power is so destructive that even Death himself can be harmed by its effects under certain circumstances. In addition to this deadly power, Death can sense the life force of living beings, allowing him to detect the presence of life around him. Like the rest of Apocalypse's family, he also possesses enhanced longevity and extreme resilience, surviving severe injuries that would kill most mutants. And despite his loyalty to his family, Death eventually showed independence by turning against his mother Genesis and joining Storm and Apocalypse to help end the Iraqi Civil War. Famine is also one of the first horsemen of Apocalypse, and his mutations centered around water manipulation. He can control moisture with incredible precision, shaping water into deadly weapons such as slicing blades or massive tidal waves capable of devastating entire battlefields. Even more terrifying is his ability to drain all moisture from a living body, instantly desiccating his enemies and killing them through extreme dehydration. This power makes him one of the most lethal combatants among the horsemen, and he can eliminate opponents without even needing to physically strike them. Like the rest of Apocalypse's family, Famine also has enhanced longevity and immense combat experience, having trained for thousands of years in relentless warfare. Pestilence. also one of the legendary first horsemen of Apocalypse. When Okara was invaded by the demonic forces of Ament, Pestilence and her family were trapped there for thousands of years, fighting in an endless war that hardened her into one of the most feared mutants of her era. Pestilence possessed abilities tied to disease and biological corruption. In battle, she wielded a bow and fired arrows laced with deadly toxins that could infect enemies with deadly diseases almost instantly. These plagues could spread rapidly across armies, turning the battlefield itself into a biological weapon. Combined with her strategic mind and military leadership, she became both a powerful warrior and a dangerous commander, capable of leading vast mutant forces. Despite her immense power, she ultimately met her end at the hands of her own brother, Death. War possesses Omega-level pyrokinetic abilities, allowing her to generate and manipulate immense flames in combat. She can channel this fire directly into her weapon, increasing their destructive power, or shape the flames into parts of her own body. When she once lost a hand in battle, she simply replaced it with a blazing limb made of fire. Her signature weapon, the sword Vermilion, further amplifies her fire-based abilities. Her story is deeply tied to the events of the X of Swords, where she fought as one of Oraku's champions during the legendary tournament between Krakow and Oraku. War's martial skills and endless flame powers made her one of the most dangerous combatants in the conflict. Sebastian Shaw is a powerful mutant and longtime leader of the Hellfire Club. His primary ability allows him to absorb kinetic energy, such as punches, explosions, or impacts, and convert it into physical power. The more energy he absorbs, the stronger, faster, and more durable he becomes. This makes him extremely dangerous in combat because every attack against him only fuels his strength. Later, Shaw underwent a secondary mutation after being exposed to the Mother Vine. This evolution enhanced his existing abilities by removing one of his biggest limitations. Previously, Shaw needed to absorb energy from direct attacks or physical activity in order to power himself up. After his mutation, Shaw gained the ability to absorb ambient, kinetic energy from the environment around him without needing to be hit first. He could also release this stored energy as powerful blasts or shock waves, firing concussive energy attacks from his hands or unleashing destructive waves in all directions. This upgrade made him even more dangerous, allowing him to fight at full power without relying on enemies to strike him first. Thomas Cassidy. He is a mutant who originally possessed the ability to channel powerful energy blasts through wood. He usually focused this power through his wooden shillelagh, allowing him to release concussive or heat-based blasts during combat. Over time, various experiments and genetic alterations changed the nature of his mutation, leading to the development of a secondary mutation. And this mutation caused Black Tom's body to partially merge with plant-like organic matter, giving him a strong connection to plant life. As a result, he gained the ability to control and manipulate vegetation, including trees and other plant-based organisms. His body even began developing wood-like textures, showing how deeply his mutation had evolved. Later stories expanded this power even further when Black Tom formed a symbiotic connection with living island of Krakow. Through this link, he could sense everything happening across the island and control parts of its environment, such as moving trees, shifting the terrain, or using the ecosystem itself as a weapon. Molecule Man. His real name is Owen Reese, and he first appeared in Fantastic Four 20 in 1963. He initially emerges as a villain with powers that rank him among the most powerful figures in Marvel lore, due to his ability to manipulate matter at a molecular level. Owen Reese was originally a timid and unassertive laboratory technician who gained his abilities following an accident involving an experimental particle generator. This accident granted him the power to manipulate all matter and energy, allowing him to alter, control, or rearrange molecules, effectively giving him near-limitless creative and destructive capabilities. But despite his vast powers, Reese's early portrayals often depicted him as psychologically restrained by his own insecurities, which prevented him from realizing his full potential. And over time, his character evolved significantly. Initially portrayed as a villain due to misunderstandings and his own fear-driven reactions, Reese gradually becomes more of a nuanced character. He grapples with his personal demons and the moral implications of his power, oscillating between periods of seeking peace and isolation and moments of profound impact on the Marvel Universe. His ambitions grew as he learned of his link to the Beyonders and their universe, discovering that they orchestrated the lab accident to make him a walking bomb capable of destroying the universe when he dies. He worked with Dr. Doom to thwart the Beyonders' grand plan. Ultimately, Molecule Man has the ability to destroy everything in existence, and the Watcher Uatu has proclaimed Owen Reese to be the most powerful being in the Marvel multiverse, and he has played pivotal roles in several major Marvel storylines, including the Secret Wars events. In the original Secret Wars, he is transported by the cosmic entity known as the Beyonder to Battleworld,
where he is a key player among an assembly of heroes and villains, and in the 2015 Secret Wars, Reese's powers are central to the plot, as his abilities are exploited to hold together the patchwork planet of Battleworld, and he eventually plays a crucial role in reconstructing the Marvel multiverse. But despite his potential for omnipotence, Molecule Man often remains a reluctant participant in cosmic affairs, characterized by his desire for a normal life free from the burdens of his abilities.